001. Outside the sacred timeline. 0 time zone dimension. Under normal circumstances, there should be nothing here, no space, no time, no matter, it is a real void. But at the moment, it is full of a large number of abstract, retro-futuristic buildings, which are extremely spectacular and shocking at a glance, and have existed for countless years. This is TVA Time Variance Administration. And in the timing hall of the main office area, in the same gridwork partitions, a large number of timekeepers wearing the same white shirts are sitting upright. They are responsible for monitoring every event on the timeline, year after year, without end. Suddenly, one of the fat men changed his expression, showing surprise and even disbelief. He wiped his eyes under the glasses vigorously, put them on again, and looked at the screen in front of him vigorously. You read it right. The time branch is red. This represents the top event crisis. If it continues to develop, it will cause unpredictable and terrible dangers to the sacred timeline. The man picked up the old red landline in panic, and after 3 seconds of being connected, he quickly said, TC02354 report to the superior. Taser. Supervisor, time. Time branch, red crisis. Timeline. 2012, 11:27. A low echo came from the phone, got it. 3 minutes ago. 2012, November 27th, night. In a port in Tennessee, there is a fierce battle here. I saw a series of humanoid steel machines with different shapes constantly swooping down, attacking a man with a naked upper body and red skin like a hot iron. Bang bang bang. As the steel armor was constantly destroyed and disintegrated, Tony finally found an opportunity to wrap the armor he was wearing on Killian's body. The next second he issued a self-destruct order without hesitation, wanting to use the reactor to blow up the cyborg on the opposite side and avenge Pepper. However, it did not go as he wished. After the violent explosion, Killian, who had the most successful Extremis transformation, did not die. The opponent's broken limbs were like magma, wriggling and growing again and solidifying. Killian looked at Iron Man's shocked expression with great satisfaction, and laughed happily as a winner. This is the real evolution, your iron creations are not worth mentioning at all. Haha, Stark. How do you feel now that you are defeated by something you despise? Tony half knelt on the ground, looking at the enemy in front of him with some despair. Lost. There is no way he can defeat the opponent with his body. I didn't expect that I would die in the hands of humans after defeating Chitauri. It's really ironic. Hey! Tony shouted involuntarily, looking at the top of Killian's head in surprise. Seeing this, Killian sneered, didn't even look up, and said without hiding the contempt in his eyes, do you think I am a third-rate villain who will be deceived by such low-level means? I really think highly of you, Star. He hasn't finished speaking yet. Boom. A thunderclap seemed to come from the endless void, causing the entire space to vibrate. The next second, in Tony's shocked eyes, a golden thunder fell from the space crack and hit Killian, who looked disdainful. The dazzling light seemed like a punishment from heaven. However, in the intense light and vibration, Tony was also thrown to the ground and fell heavily. A few seconds later, he shook his shaking head and looked at the place where the thunder had just hit. I saw that Killian, the winner who was just so arrogant, at the moment only had the body above the chest and the calves below the knees. The body in the middle was shattered, and a strange young man was lying on it. The next second, the other party seemed to be awakened by the burn, jumped up and screamed in pain, while taking off the clothes on his body that began to burn. Tony was a little confused, what was going on? The enemy that he couldn't solve was smashed to death? This is too dramatic. Russell was also stunned. What was going on? I was watching the sunrise on Mount Tai just a second ago, but a golden lightning struck me the moment the sun came out. As a result, I was on fire when I woke up, and the sky was dark. I was unconscious for so long, but no one saved me. I am a freshman, and I don't look like an old man who would blackmail people. At this time, a humming sound came from under my feet. Russell looked down and suddenly found that the land before had become a steel bridge at some point, with a terrifying body lying on it, and blood like magma was constantly flowing out of the wound. This scene is actually very scary in the eyes of ordinary people, but he felt familiar at the moment. I seem to have seen this person somewhere? No? Is this a person? In an instant, Russell's sense of familiarity became stronger, as if he could react just by missing a layer of window paper. At this time, he saw the dying man looking at him with resentment, and then he turned his neck to face the other direction with great effort. The flame of anger burned in his eyes, and he roared with his last strength, "Tony Stark, I will take you to hell." Tui. A mouthful of thick phlegm. Oh no, it was a mouthful of burning magma blood, like a meteor, which hit the chest of the man who was struggling to climb up not far away in Russell's shocked eyes. In an instant, the micro-reactor was destroyed, and almost instantly melted through the flesh and blood heart. Tony Stark screamed and died directly. It was a clean and tidy move, leaving no chance for rescue. This familiar voice finally broke the last layer of window paper in Russell's heart. He finally realized why no one saved him on the top of Mount Tai. This is not the Earth at all. He traveled to the scene of Killian fighting Iron Man in Iron Man 3. This is the Marvel world. It's just... What the hell is this hero nemesis? Why did I die just after crossing Iron Man 002? Russell was a little confused. Tony Stark, who snapped his fingers in Avengers Alliance 4. Hulk still had one arm at that time, so it was possible. But within a second, Russell refuted himself. Iron Man is dead now, so there will be no Titan battle later. And without the Titan battle, how can there be Avengers Alliance 4? There is still no solution. Not to mention that the Marvel world is dangerous and chaotic, and ordinary people like him may not even live to that time. For example. Now, Russell suddenly noticed from the corner of his eye that Killian, who had just sprayed Stark to death with a mouthful of magma, was not dead yet, and turned his neck back to look at him, his throat moving. After killing the most hated enemy, it is obvious that he has to kill him as the justice from heaven. Killian is definitely angry. He has obviously won, but this is the ending. It's as if fate is destined not to let him win. If he didn't have to kill Iron Man anyway, the first thing he would spit out would be this weirdo who suddenly appeared in front of him. The next second, his broken chest squirmed, closed, and compressed, and opened his mouth again. For a moment, the throbbing of his soul made Russell feel as if he had seen the death god. The dark and cold breath of death was engulfing him, making his whole body stiff. There seemed to be some mechanical sound in his heart. But he had no time to distinguish whether it was an auditory hallucination or something else. He roared in his heart and forced his terrified body to roll to the right. He was still so young, he didn't want to die. He wanted to live. Whoosh! A ball of hot magma brushed against his ears, and after burning more than a dozen hairs in an instant, it disappeared into the distant night like a meteor. Plop! Russell lay on the iron frame, ignoring the pain on his body, breathing in the cold air. He dodged it. Just a little bit, just 1 centimeter. If he hadn't resisted the fear and successfully controlled his body, the magma would have penetrated his brain just now, and he would have ended up like Iron Man. He almost died. In an instant, fear turned into raging rage. He climbed up, holding a sharp piece of steel debris in his hand, and roared to fight to the death. Those who want to kill me, go to hell. But when he turned around, he saw that the other party's body no longer radiated a fiery red temperature, and the flames in his eyes had gone out, leaving carbonized eyeballs. Killian was dead. Russell was stunned, and after a trance, he sat down on the steel frame, gasping for breath. A few seconds later, he showed a helpless bitter smile. Is this Marvel? He gave him a warning just after crossing. It's simply the grave of ordinary crossers. And he remembered that Pepper didn't die in this battle, and she would be reborn from the ashes in a while. How should he explain his origins then? Why did he appear here? This woman is not an indecisive fool. She can manage Stark Company in an orderly manner, and she will definitely not be fooled. Even if he is not careful, he will end up in Nick Fury's hands. Besides, Iron Man is dead, and this woman is probably going crazy in her current state. Russell sighed again. Of all the 36 strategies, running away is the best strategy. If you can't think of a solution, just run away first. But at this moment, suddenly an orange light flashed in the night, and a rectangular light gate appeared out of thin air in front of Russell. The next second, a team of soldiers wearing standard black power suits, with TVA orange marks on their chests and holding black short sticks burst out of the door. Russell's face froze, he had already recognized who it was. The short stick and badge with the logo were so easy to identify. The Time Variance Administration. A super organization that openly maintains the sacred timeline and cannot tolerate any time branch. FK it. Russell couldn't help but curse in his heart. At the moment he finally understood that the most dangerous place to cross Marvel was not the Earth, but the Time Variance Administration. He killed Killian as soon as he crossed, and Iron Man was killed by the butterfly effect. This has completely changed his fate. Now this is not the sacred timeline at all, but a new time branch. As long as TVA is not blind, it will definitely find it. At this time, Russell was brought back to his senses by the hurried footsteps behind him. He looked back and saw that the other end of the steel frame was also blocked by soldiers running out of the light gate. But it's not over yet. At this time, 4 light gates lit up again in the air outside the steel frame, one on the left and one on the right. 4 teams of soldiers swarmed out from inside with weapons in hand, stepped on the temporary red space barrier, and completely surrounded him. Russell couldn't help but twitch his mouth. Is this a bit too exaggerated? Even if Loki is caught, there is no need for such a battle, right? TVA thinks too highly of itself. At this time, a low voice sounded behind the portal in front, a high-level time sequence identity hidden time criminal, this is the first time I have seen it in so many years. During the voice, a man wearing a red retro suit, who looked to be in his 40s, with a high nose bridge, gold-rimmed glasses and silver hair neatly combed back, walked out. The man looked up and down at Russell standing there with a scrutinizing look, and then said strangely, "Why is he an ordinary person?" Under the scanning of the TVA high-level radiation capture instrument, no high-energy reaction was found, and the physical body was just the normal male standard. The man shook his head, his face returned to a stern look and said, "I am Tesseract, a high-level supervisor of the Time Variance Administration. I will arrest you for violating the sacred timeline now, so start." The time guards immediately swarmed away, and Russell surrendered very straightforwardly and was put on a time collar. It is impossible to resist. It is impossible to win, and it is really unnecessary to be beaten. He is not Loki. It is better to go through the process, so that he can have more time to think about how to survive in the void after being cut. In addition to the monster Elrios, there are all kinds of time prisoners in that place, which is far more dangerous than the real world. God knows how many people TVA has stuffed in there over the years. Seeing that the time prisoners did not resist, Tesseract frowned slightly. At this time, a time guard took an instrument and scanned it a few times, then turned back and reported, "Supervisor, there is no energy reaction in any form, he is an ordinary person." Tesseract was a little puzzled, but still shook his head and turned to disappear into the portal. Then the soldiers began to retreat in an orderly manner, leaving only a few people to use time grenades to cut off the timeline being generated. Russell was silent and was escorted towards the portal. But just as he was about to step in, he heard the mechanical voice in his heart again. "It's not an illusion. System startup successful. Detection of death due to the host at the scene. Looting entries began. Looting completed. Ding. Extremis, green, knowledge curse, purple, mechanical furnace, blue-purple, detected as unmatched, mutating. 003. In just a moment, the mechanical sound sounded again. The mutation is complete. Mechanical furnace, blue-purple, transformed into furnace heart, mutation. Russell had a blank expression on his face, and he breathed a sigh of relief when he saw from the corner of his eyes that the TVA soldiers around him did not react. It seems that the sound of this system can only be heard by himself. He couldn't help but get excited. Awakening system, in the Marvel world, the probability of survival is greatly increased. Even becoming stronger is not a dream. Perhaps this is the reward for not being willing to be ordinary. Russell forced himself to suppress his excitement, kept silent, and walked into the portal with his demeanor. What he saw was a huge amount of corridors, which were taller than those seen in movies and TV shows, and the walls had a retro style of the last century. There were many employees in white shirts and some time guards coming and going. It looked very busy here. Russell pretended to be curious about the environment, but in his heart he used his mind to feel the 3 entries he had just plundered. Extremis, from Killian's entry. It has a powerful self-healing ability, strength strengthening, and no fatal organs. It also controls high temperatures, up to 1800. At the same time, it also abandons weaknesses, and will not be irritable, manic, crazy, and explode uncontrollably. Russell was delighted. This entry will undoubtedly increase the probability of his survival in the void, and he has a certain self-protection ability. And this is only green. The rarity of the entry is white, blue, green, purple, gold, and red. He continued to perceive knowledge curse, this entry is purple. In an instant, the entry information appeared in his mind. Knowledge curse, ability type entry. You have a strong understanding and learning ability for both technological and mysterious knowledge, and have a certain degree of creativity. Russell was a little surprised. He didn't expect that Iron Man's entry would also work on the mysterious side. Doesn't this mean that he will have a powerful magic ability? Although there is no combat power for the time being, in the long run, the gains brought by this entry will be unimaginable. No wonder it can be classified as purple. Russell looked at the last entry at this time. Heart of the Furnace, this is the only variant entry. Its ability is to transform the heart into an energy core, which can continuously absorb free radiation atoms in the air for reaction, and burst out powerful life force. And it continues, subtly transforming the flesh and blood body to become more powerful. Even amplify the power of Extremis. And this is not over yet. This variant entry has another ability. Furnace Overload. When activated, the blood in the body can be used as fuel, converted into the purest energy, and can attack with energy rays, bless the body, and cast spells, provided that spells can be cast. The ratio is 100 mg of blood converted into 10 units of energy. Taking Doctor Strange's Vishanti Holy Sword as an example, each unit can be released 10 times. But once it is activated, it will not stop until 4/10 of the blood in the body is burned. The human body has 4,200 ml of blood, and 4/10 is nearly 1,700 ml. Ordinary people will go into shock directly. Even if he has strong vitality, he will fall into weakness. In short, this is an explosive ability. Russell will not use it unless it is absolutely necessary. It is a trump card. And overall, he feels that this mutation entry is not weaker than the purple knowledge curse, and even better. What an unexpected surprise. After sighing in his heart, Russell loaded 3 entries without hesitation. There is no progress bar, and the power is loaded in an instant. At this moment, he clearly perceives the changes in his body, the power is surging in his blood, the world is clearer in his eyes, and the brain reacts faster. The time change situation has a ban on magic, but there is no limit to physical fitness. At the moment, he only needs to use a little force to overturn the TVA soldiers who are holding him. However, Russell did not act rashly and thought he was invincible. There are so many powerful time offenders in the Void Land, he does not think that TVA did it by sneak attack. According to comparative analysis, the power shown by TVA in Loki must be only a part of it. Moreover, the time collar is very deadly, unless you can directly grab the controller, there is no solution. Russell memorized the route and various information along the way. After taking the elevator down 25 floors, he turned around and came to the door of a closed room. The door was dark and there was no glass, so he couldn't see what was going on inside. Russell frowned slightly. He remembered that in the American TV series Loki, the process after Loki was caught was not like this. First, he was changed into clothes, read out by the examiner, and finally judged by a female judge. But now it was obviously not the same process. Is it the time when Loki became a god? But looking at the murals in the corridor, there were still 3 lizardmen, so it shouldn't have happened yet. At this time, a time guard opened the door, pushed Russell in, and then slammed it shut again. "Hello, sir, sit here." A warm voice came, and Russell looked up and saw a very simple table in the depths of the room of 200 or 300 square meters, with only something like a toaster on it. A man in a black suit, a grey tie, and grey hair sat on the left, and at the moment made an invitation gesture with his right hand. "Mr. Paradox?" Russell recognized who this person was, but he didn't expect that he would join the company at this time. So it seems that Professor X's evil twin sister may not be caught after Loki too. Russell deliberately made a cautious gesture, looked around, and then carefully sat down opposite. "You are?" he said cautiously. Mr. Paradox smiled slightly and said in a calm tone, "Don't worry, sir, our Time Variation Administration is not an evil organization, aiming to protect the peace of the sacred timeline. In other words, we are actually good people." As he said, he snapped his fingers, and a hole suddenly appeared in the bread machine on the table, projecting the origin and history of TVA on the wall. It was no different from what Russell saw in Loki. Until the projection ended, Mr. Paradox smiled and said, "This is TVA, so don't think we are targeting you on purpose. As long as you tell us your origins, we will check that. As long as you are not deliberately interfering with the timeline, we will send you back to your own time point." Sent to the void. Russell sneered in his heart, he knew what kind of guy this guy was. If there was no awakening system and before he gained power, his choices would probably be exile or complete destruction. But now, this is not a good choice. As a fugitive time criminal, there are obviously more opportunities to plunder entries. Also more freedom. And in TVA, you have to worry about the calculations of the people left behind. So running away and becoming a time criminal is the only way out. But the premise is that you have to grab the TVA control tablet and the controller on your neck. Russell made a thoughtful look, stood up and paced left and right along the edge of the table, and seemed to be unintentionally approaching the other side, as if he was considering it. Seeing this, Mr. Paradox did not urge or stop him. He just picked up the coffee in front of him and sipped it slowly with his head down. His whole face was shrouded in shadow, and a meaningful smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. It was at this moment that Russell rushed over at the speed that his body should have after his evolution. "Tisk tisk, can't you bear it?" Paradox said with a smile, and pressed lightly with the other finger that was always in his pocket. In an instant, Russell's body flashed and returned to the position 5 seconds ago, sitting on the chair. His face was a little confused, but he rushed towards Mr. Paradox again. But the latter just smiled slightly, took out the controller, and pressed it again when Russell's palm was about to touch him. In an instant, Russell flashed and sat on the chair again. But this time he didn't have the opportunity to rush out again, but froze in place, his eyes full of confusion and panic. Mr. Paradox pressed the pause button. Then he stood up, showing an elegant posture, looking down with an imperceptible superior look and smiling, "Ah, I guessed you wouldn't be too honest. I forgot to tell you, as long as you wear the time collar, your time is controlled by me. So, just think about it here for a while." After saying that, Mr. Paradox put down the coffee in his hand and walked out leisurely. And at the moment he could no longer see that the shadow deep in Russell's pupils had changed. From the initial shock to deep calm, there was not even a trace of panic, as if everything was expected. 004. Outside the door. After Mr. Paradox came out, he turned left and entered another room through the corridor. The walls here were filled with hundreds of old-fashioned large-head display screens, and a dozen timekeepers wearing special glasses were adjusting the screens at a rapid speed. As soon as he entered the door, he asked, "Taser, do you have any clues?" Tessirat, like him, Mobius M., and Ouroboros, are all high-level supervisors of the Time Change Bureau, led by the Grand Justice. "Absolutely nothing." Tessirat turned his head, frowned and continued, "This person is like being born out of thin air, without any past and future, and any related humans. This is unreasonable and unscientific." Mr. Paradox was also a little surprised to hear this. Although it was precisely because he could not find the other party's origin that he had just acted as a good guy, he still found this result a little unbelievable. This has never happened in TVA. This made him even more curious about the origin of the young man. After thinking for a while, he suggested, "Perhaps the observer can know. Why not let Mobius ask him? If he makes a mistake, the Grand Judge will definitely forgive him. The Time Change definitely has records of the Observer, who is a high-dimensional creature active on the timeline and knows many secrets of the universe." Taser said solemnly, "Don't think about violating TVA regulations. If it really happens, I will report you." Paradox immediately smiled and said that he was just joking, and then said that he might gain something on his side. "Acting? He is the best at it. Can't he deceive a young man?" After staying for a few more minutes, Mr. Paradox left the room. The moment he went out, the smile in his eyes disappeared and turned into contempt. "This stubborn waste, after I get promoted, I will fire him and throw him into the void." Click. The door handle turned, and Mr. Paradox walked into the room with an elegant smile. Looking at the time prisoner who was still in a frozen state, he nodded slightly, "I think this long time is enough for you to figure it out. Since I can completely control your time, I would have done it if I wanted to harm you long ago, such as making you disappear completely, so there would be no harm. Speaking of this, he is still very curious why the order from above must find out the details of this person. Just throw it into the void and let Elrios swallow it, no trace of time will be left, and there will be no accidents at all. But since the Chief Justice has spoken, no one dares to object." After a pause, Mr. Paradox continued, "So let's end this boring process quickly, you go home, and I'll finish the work." "Definitely, to show TVA's sincerity." He raised his hand, very artificially, and pressed the controller in the sight of the time prisoner. The light on the time collar suddenly turned from red to green. In an instant, Russell felt like he was released from amber and finally regained his freedom. He did not rush forward again, but sat on the chair, showing a shocked look, and said in disbelief, "Just now was time manipulation. How is this possible?" Mr. Paradox was very satisfied with the expression of the time criminal, which gave him a sense of superiority over lower creatures. This is just the simplest time controller. Expanding dimensions, creating spatial entities, traveling through time and space, technological conversion of material energy, anchoring time, future, and history, etc. The greatness of TVA is unimaginable to ordinary humans like you. After saying this, he put the controller back in his pocket and sat down across the table again. Perhaps it was the effect of the knowledge curse entry. Russell easily discovered the emotions hidden in the other person's eyes. He sneered in his heart, but the expression on his face became more shocked. Then he showed a trace of respect appropriately, and nodded in agreement. "Indeed, I thought too much. The fact that an ordinary person like me can live to this day is enough to reflect the kindness and integrity of your organization. I really should cooperate." Hearing this, Mr. Paradox's mouth curled up slightly, and he felt a little proud in his heart. It was too easy to deal with an ordinary person. But at this moment, he saw the other party showing an embarrassment. "What's wrong?" he asked. Russell said awkwardly, "I was just an ordinary earthling before, studying at the sports university, and I am a freshman this year. I don't know how the time violation you mentioned happened. I only know that a lightning bolt fell and I hit that terrible fireman." He said anxiously, "This was an accident. I didn't mean to kill him. You won't convict me for this, right?" Russell didn't know if TVA had a lie detector function. In order to prevent accidents, he chose not to lie. Mr. Paradox was surprised again. This was the first time he encountered a situation where lightning made people travel through time. It sounded like a plot in a novel. But time is extremely complicated, so this may not be impossible. And this is not the point. He said seriously, "What about your detailed identity? And when and where were you struck by lightning?" As he spoke, his expression became a little serious, and he said with a hint of threat, "Don't lie. The interrogation room of TVA is equipped with a lie detector perception instrument, which can judge your heartbeat and subtle breathing rhythm, pupil dilation, and facial details. I can't help you then." No wonder Mobius in the interrogation room in the American TV series knew that Loki was lying. It could definitely be that he was deceiving me, but it doesn't matter. Russell showed an appropriate anxiety and hurriedly said, "I didn't lie. I'm really a college student. I was really an ordinary person before, and I was really struck by lightning." Before hearing the answer, Mr. Paradox was a little irritated. "What before and after, as if you are not an ordinary person now, what a stupid college student." The witness time criminal was still talking about useless things, and he said impatiently, "Okay, don't repeat what you said before, tell me your identity." Russell nodded and was about to get to the point. But just as he was about to speak, his expression changed, and he suddenly covered his mouth and nose with his hands and coughed violently. Mr. Paradox immediately showed a look of disgust, thinking that the time offender in front of him might have some disease. But with TVA's technology, he was not afraid. He forced a fake smile, put his hands on the table, leaned forward slightly, and pretended to care. "Are you feeling uncomfortable? It's okay, TVA can easily cure your disease, don't panic." Before he finished speaking, he suddenly saw the time offender across the table suddenly raised his head, and the deep pupils of the eyes he met were slightly golden. There was no panic in it. There was no pain. He was lying to me. How dare he? This was Mr. Paradox's first reaction. Then he laughed in his heart. Stupid low-level monkey, actually deceived himself and wanted to fight back. How foolish. Naive. Although his right hand had left his pocket and was not holding the controller of the time collar all the time. But in the 1 second when the other party rushed over, it was enough for him to put his right hand into his pocket again and accurately press the pause button. The time supervisor. Not a waste. At this moment, Mr. Paradox's mouth corners were slightly curved, and he was about to show a mocking smile. This time he wanted to interrogate in a different way. The kind that would make him scream. However, at the moment when he made a move to reach out, he saw a playful look in the eyes of the time offender. Playful? Why? Moreover, the other party did not make a move to rush out. He was very puzzled. And in the next moment, he saw that the other party had loosened his palm covering his mouth and nose, and his bulging chest suddenly sank. Puff! Mr. Paradox's eyes reflected the light of fire, and a hot flame meteor instantly crossed the space of less than 2 meters. 005. Russell saw with his own eyes how Killian spit out magma-like blood to kill Tony Stark. Magma-like blood can easily melt flesh and blood. Just like now. He slowly stood up from the chair, walked around the table, and looked down at Mr. Paradox, who had fallen to the ground. The superior, who was just high above, at the moment, had a fist-sized hole melted through the left side of his neck. The dark brown wound kept gushing out streams of scarlet blood as his heart beat. How? Hee hee. Hee hee. Mr. Paradox only said one word, and then he was choked by the blood in his throat and could no longer speak. At this moment, his eyes were full of horror and disbelief. He couldn't understand why the other party was obviously an ordinary person without any power, a garbage time offender. How could he suddenly spit out magma-like blood like Killian? It was obviously detected when the other party was captured. But at the moment, thinking about these things is useless. He felt his mind becoming heavier, his body becoming numb, and the world becoming darker. In the final countdown of his life, he saw a pair of eyes filled with mockery. As if silently telling how arrogant and stupid he was. Damn, I obviously have other means. With strong unwillingness, Mr. Paradox's eyes completely lost their spirit. At this time, the alarm sounded. Russell was not surprised. It should be that TVA has the means to detect the life characteristics of these high-level supervisors, and the alarm will be triggered once they die. He was very calm and composed, without any fear or excitement after the first murder. He leaned down quickly and quickly searched the other person's pocket, finding a foldable tablet and a controller. At the same time, the plundering system prompted again. Plunder completed, healthy body, white, its ability is not easy to get sick, and there is no hidden disease. Seeing this entry, Russell was a little speechless. This TVA time supervisor is really a waste, except for a slightly healthier body, he has no ability. With the blessing of Extremis, he was too lazy to load it. Russell no longer paid attention to the entries and focused on the controller. With Mr. Paradox pressing the switch in front of him, he quickly identified the correct button. Ding! The time control collar was lifted. Russell was free again, and he couldn't help but feel happy. Next was the time tablet. With the entry of the knowledge curse, he didn't understand how to operate it. At the moment, there were a lot of running sounds outside the door. Russell opened the time tablet without hesitation, which was the same as the deceptive electronic dictionary in the advertisements 10 years before he traveled through time. Swish! The red light suddenly flashed and exploded. A monster like a clock spirit jumped out from it, constantly enlarging and rushing towards Russell. Wow wow wow, the people left behind said that you would have an accident, and it turned out to be true. Miss Time laughed and grew wildly, and with a hideous expression on the dial, it looked very scary. Russell didn't expect such an unexpected change to happen. How could Miss Time hide in Mr. Paradox's tablet? And it sounds like Kong, who is at the end of time, has noticed him. This is not good news. Russell was surprised, as if he was shocked by the giant Miss Time. Seeing this, Miss Time laughed and said, "Human, how did you get the power of Extremis? Tell me and I won't kill you." However, as soon as she finished speaking, she saw that the time criminal in front of her suddenly ignored her completely. Russell has come back to his senses. Although there was an accident, he knew that Miss Time had no mechanical possession and had no fighting power. He continued to operate the time tablet and wanted to travel through time and space. However, after setting the time and coordinates, and clicking the confirm button to open the time and space gate, there was no response at all. Although Miss Time didn't know why the time offender in front of her was suddenly not afraid of her, she still said happily, "Oh, it's a pity for the time offender. My authority over the time tablet is a little higher than that of the supervisor. You can't run away." As she said this, the expression on her face turned into a cartoon smile, shrunk to a normal file size, and floated in front of Russell and continued, "Just surrender obediently, you look very special, and the people left behind will definitely use you." Her words were pure nonsense. Because the people left behind are more likely to dissect this very interesting special time offender. Russell, who has seen the plot of Loki, definitely knows that this cartoon character is lying. He did not make any more meaningless attempts. Instead, he put the time tablet into his pocket and looked at the cartoon clock in front of him and suddenly said, you shouldn't have not reminded Mr. Paradox. Miss Time said cheerfully and indifferently, if he dies, he dies. We can have as many of these as we want. Russell shook his head, no, not death. But, you shouldn't have given me the chance to take off the time collar. The voice fell. The door of the room had been opened, and a team of time guards ran in aggressively with cutting sticks. Miss Time swung in the air and did not remind the time guards what Russell's power was. But she crossed her legs like a human, intending to record what interesting things this time prisoner who suddenly possessed Extremis could do. As for the life and death of the time guards, as she said before, there are as many of these things as you want, so don't worry about it. Here Russell's eyes have turned into molten gold, and the iron-like blood vessels under his skin are looming, and the surrounding area is emitting high temperature. The next second, he also rushed towards the time guards rushing in, looking like he was going to fight for his life. But just when he was about to make contact, he retracted his attacking posture and took the initiative to hit the cutting stick. In midair, the cartoon expression of Miss Time, who was originally calm and confident, instantly changed to sweating and anxious. She yelled, "Don't attack! Stop it!" But it was too late. Although the time guard in the front heard the order and wanted to execute it, he couldn't retract the cutting stick he was holding. The front end of the short stick, which was emitting golden orange light, directly hit the chest of the front. The cutting took effect. Russell looked at his chest that was beginning to disappear, without panic. Instead, he waved his hand to Miss Time, who had turned into a panic expression, and smiled, "Goodbye, cartoon man without a body." "Oh, wrong, you are not even a cartoon man, you are a cartoon clock." After the voice fell, he completely disappeared, as if he had never existed. Only a team of time guards who looked at each other in bewilderment, and Miss Time, whose expression kept switching between anger and panic, were left. Voidland. Russell stood up from the ground, patted the dust off his butt, and felt much more relaxed. Although Plan A did not succeed, but being able to escape the time change under the attention of the survivor Kong was considered a success. Moreover, he also brought out the supervisor-level time tablet. With the knowledge curse entry, he may not be unable to break the restrictions. Moreover, even if it doesn't work, there is still the infinite gem sling ring to leave this place. Although it is difficult, it is not hopeless. At this time, Russell noticed something from the corner of his eye, and suddenly looked sideways. On the hills in the distance, there was a guy who looked like Captain America running wildly. Is that Thunderbolt 006? The end of time. Deep in the castle, at the moment, the silence was terrifying. Kong, the survivor, sat behind the desk with a gloomy face. Miss Time, who was emitting a faint orange light, stood on the table with a fearful expression. She was mainly responsible for the failure of this mission. After all, the time tablet was locked. If it was not cut, that special time offender would not be able to escape. Seeing that the survivor was still silent, she weakly tried to suggest, "The survivor, why don't you let Paradox contact the time offenders in the Void Land? I have always known that he was secretly trading behind the scenes. Although Paradox died just now, these time supervisors can be cloned at will, which is no different from time guards. They are all consumables." Kong, the survivor, raised his head and said coldly, "Just do it. We must catch him, no matter what the cost." At the moment, he also regretted it very much. At the beginning, he didn't care when the Chief Justice reported, but later he found that his script machine could not see the future of this person. This is unreasonable. Any life on any timeline should be monitored. And at the beginning, they were just ordinary humans. Why did they suddenly burst out with the power of Extremis, and even escape to the void with a purpose in the end? It is obvious that the other party knew that the cutter would not die. There must be unimaginable secrets in this person. The more the people who were left behind thought about it, the more they regretted it. One mistake made the future uncertain. I should have pushed the other party to the end of time from the beginning. In front of me, no one can make a fuss. He looked at Miss Time coldly. "Remember to tell those time offenders that I want to live. Otherwise, I will let them taste death repeatedly in the abyss of time." Miss Time's illusory body shuddered, nodded, and disappeared. Voidland. Russell looked at the figure running in the distance who looked like Captain America, thinking about whether to leave or contact. Although the Human Torch died of foul mouth, he was still a good person and should not attack him. And this guy died in Deadpool 3. According to the timeline of the Void, at least it is safe now, and there is no need to face Professor X's sister. But Russell was a little confused. Why didn't this guy fly? Is he afraid of being discovered by the monster Elrios? Russell thought about it and decided to make contact. The dangers of the void are definitely more than those shown in Loki and Deadpool 3, so it is better to learn more about it. But before he moved, he suddenly found that the guy in the distance had discovered him and suddenly ran towards him. Don't mention it, although this guy didn't fly, he ran very fast. He ran over in less than 10 seconds. Hey man! The man in a tattered windbreaker braked suddenly and said with a friendly smile, look at your new clothes, they were just cut by the time guards. These soldiers with no assholes and shit in their brains should be fed to Elrios. Oh, I guess you don't know what Elrios is. He is a monster that eats everything. I'm telling you, here. Before Russell opened his mouth, he saw this man who looked exactly like Captain America chattering non-stop. And judging by the degree of his swearing, he looked like the Human Torch. After a few minutes, the man finally finished. He introduced some dangerous places, the signs of the appearance of Elrios, and some terrible mutant creatures in general. In short, he was very friendly. Russell smiled and expressed his gratitude. The man immediately invited him to the base. There were some time prisoners who were also cut, and they lived together to fight danger. Russell looked at the Human Torch in front of him with expectation and did not answer. After a careful look, he suddenly showed a look of surprise and said, I think I know who you are. You are Mr. Thunderbolt from the Fantastic Four, right? I have seen you on TV before, but I didn't expect you to come here too. The man didn't hesitate at all, and laughed, so you are my fan, what a coincidence. So, when we get to the base later, I will open a bottle of good wine and cook a good meal to treat you. It just so happens that everyone is greedy. Today is a really good day. Hearing this, Russell smiled even more, and even shook Thunderbolt's hands excitedly, that's great. With Mr. Jonathan here, I am safe, and I am really grateful. Thunderbolt smiled even more brightly, and then wanted to retract his palm. But the next second, his expression froze a little. Because his hand was not retracted. The other party's hands were like pliers, tightly holding him. It's okay, brother. Thunderbolt looked at the sky, then his expression became a little anxious and said, we can't be exposed outside for too long, especially when we don't move, it will attract the time monster. Let's go quickly. After saying that, he tried to pull his palm out with a little force, but still couldn't pull it out. Thunderbolt frowned slightly, seeming a little unhappy. But Russell didn't seem to notice it, but held his hand tighter, and then smiled and said, Mr. Thunderbolt, I am also a flame user. Look at how much difference my temperature is compared to yours. I hope you can teach me. The voice fell. His hands quickly turned into the color of a branding iron, and the air around him was distorted, showing an extremely hot state. Ah! Thunderbolt let out a scream full of pain, and kicked out fiercely at the same time. Russell loosened his palm and easily avoided the attack. Then, she smiled at the man whose hands had been severely burned and turned brown and looked painful, and said, How is it, Mr. Thunderbolt, how is my temperature? 007. The man slowly straightened up, his face changed from the previous friendly one, and his whole body was filled with a creepy shadow, like a poisonous snake. He ignored his injured hands, his eyes were sinister. How did you find out that I'm not his? Russell looked at this man who was neither Captain America nor the Human Torch and laughed, because you are too enthusiastic. Although I don't know the Human Torch very well, he is definitely not the person you show him to be. The most important flaw, Russell did not say. Because from Deadpool 3, that guy is a lone wolf. There will definitely be no teammates. So the purpose of this guy in front of him is to trick himself into the so-called base. The so-called feast will only be himself. Hearing this, the man showed regret and said regretfully, I didn't even think about playing the role of the Human Torch at first, although I knew that guy looked like me. Now it seems that it was a mistake to agree to this name. Hearing this, Russell was a little curious, then is your foul mouth born? The man sneered, from a psychological point of view, swearing is to some extent a hearty expression, which can make the other party lose some of their vigilance. It is especially useful for time prisoners who have just been cut and are at a loss in a strange place. Good guy, he is still playing psychology. The Voidland is really dangerous. After complaining in his heart, Russell suddenly said, speaking of which, with this face, why don't you imitate Steve Rogers? I might really believe it. However, after saying this, he saw the man opposite him tilt his head and suddenly smiled grimly. I am Steve Rogers. Hydra hail! With a loud shout, his hand had taken out a large caliber revolver from his waist without knowing when. Bang bang bang! From drawing the gun to shooting, it took less than 0.5 seconds. 3 bullets hit the eyebrow, heart and left lung accurately, highlighting a steady, accurate and fast. Steve blew the gunpowder coming out of the barrel, looked at the body lying on the ground in front of him, and sneered smugly, friendly reminder, don't be arrogant in the void. Even if you can control the high temperature, you can only survive by being vigilant at all times. After saying that, he put the revolver back into his waist, tore a piece of rag from his windbreaker, and wanted to bandage his burned hands. There was no trace of pain on his face, as if he was used to being hurt. Obviously, the previous screams were also fake. But at this moment, a voice that shouldn't have appeared suddenly sounded, I didn't expect to be taught a lesson as soon as I came to the void, but I also have a piece of advice for you. Remember not to open champagne at halftime when you are not sure whether the other party is really dead. Hydra Captain. This voice sounded like a thunder in my heart. Steve looked up with a look of astonishment, his pupils shrank suddenly, and he couldn't help but take a step back. The man who was killed by him sat up straight at the moment. Lava-like substance flowed out from the wounds on his forehead and chest. I don't know if it was the bullets that melted, or if it was the other person's blood. The scorching heat had already ripped off his shirt, revealing his upper body like a branding iron, with red gold veins showing under his skin, coupled with his golden eyes and the distorted air around him. For a moment, he felt as if he saw a fire demon walking out of hell. What the hell are you? He said this while retreating without hesitation. At the same time, he pulled out the revolver from his waist and fired again. Bang, bang, bang. 3 shots hit accurately again. However, there was no joy on Steve's face. This time, the large caliber bullet only made the other person stagger, and he couldn't even knock him down. Russell grinned, revealing 2 rows of white teeth. Now, it's my turn. This time he didn't bite his tongue and spit out the opponent to death. He wanted to catch him alive. With the strength of Extremis, he half-crouched on the ground and shot out like a sharp arrow. Opposite. Steve didn't have time to change bullets. But his rich combat experience told him that he must not turn around and run away at this time, only a head-on fight would have a chance. And he could see that the opponent didn't have much fighting skills. The advantage is mine. He threw away the pistol, shouted Hydra hail, and also charged. At the moment when the 2 sides were about to collide, he changed his posture and quickly and cleverly grabbed the opponent's left arm joint. Then he turned around flexibly and was about to form a shoulder throw with the force of the opponent. However, the idea is beautiful, the reality is cruel. The man groaned in pain, and felt that his hands were like holding a piece of hot steel that had just been formed. Prediction error. The temperature is much higher than before. It is not something that can be touched by flesh and blood. Even if it is strengthened by the super soldier serum, it won't work. The other party deliberately confused him from the beginning. How treacherous! The sizzling sound of burning mixed with the smell of cooked meat, the severe pain made Rogers unable to clench, and he couldn't clench. Because if he continued, the whole hand would be cooked. And the consequences of misjudgment were fatal. At the moment he wanted to dodge, but Russell didn't agree. Although he had no fighting skills, who asked the opponent to take the initiative to turn his back and hold his left arm. He held the opponent tightly and pressed his body forward. Then he punched him in the back of the neck. Although the opponent's body was much stronger than a normal person, the strengthening power brought by Extremis could make up for this. After one punch, the great Hydra captain fainted without a word. But Russell didn't take it lightly. The next second, without any hesitation, his hands became even hotter and redder, and he used his palms as knives to directly cut off the opponent's arms. 008. The severe pain woke up the Hydra captain, and he let out an extremely realistic scream. He realized something almost instantly, and yelled in pain, "My arm! You devil!" Russell turned over the snake team with a toe hook, stepped on the opponent's chest with one foot, and smiled slightly ferociously. "Now I ask, you answer. If you answer well, I can consider letting you go. If you don't tell the truth, I will let you know what a devil is." Steve's expression was distorted, and he said while enduring the pain, "Can you live if you say it?" Russell nodded, pointed at himself and said very sincerely, "I'm not an evil villain like you, I definitely keep my word. Besides, do you have a choice? If you don't say it, I will cut off your legs again and leave them here for Elrios to eat as a snack. Steve's body trembled instinctively. According to him, once eaten by the time monster, even the soul will be completely annihilated. Even he didn't want to face that kind of end. I agree. Remember your words. Without any choice, he could only hope that the other party would keep their promise. Russell nodded with satisfaction and asked the first question, how big is the Void Land? Steve shook his head and replied quickly, I don't know. No, I mean no one knows. This place doesn't look like a planet, it's boundless, and even the sunlight in the sky seems fake. A special dimension space? Russell instinctively thought of this word. After thinking about it, he asked again, what are the forces nearby? Don't lie, I will let you go after verification. Steve's face changed slightly when he heard this. He actually planned to trick the other party into going to a dangerous area, but this sentence blocked this method. He took a deep breath, still did not dare to lie, and gave the answer honestly, after this plane, there is a group of Deadpool's base in the forest opposite. They are particularly disgusting and no one likes to go there. Going forward, there is a mutant gathering place by the lake 200 kilometers away, and there are also some ordinary people in it. There is a black market trading point in the valley on the right. Go further to the right, there will be an abandoned city, which is the territory of Loki and others. This group of idiots with bad brains even elected a president. To the right of the city is a wet moss plain. I don't know what's inside. Definitely, there are some lone rangers and small teams of several people. They are scattered and no one knows the specific location. As for us going left here. He shuddered when he said this, showing a trace of fear and said, go deep into the plain to the left, there is a terrifying mentally ill bald woman over there, who likes to torture and kill. That side is a restricted area. No one will run there unless they are stupid. Russell probably knew this. After hearing this, the Hydra captain didn't lie. He should be talking about Cassandra, the female psychopath. He won't go there now. Even if the furnace is overloaded, there is probably no chance of winning. The base of the Loki variant is safer. But Russell was not satisfied with just this information. He looked down at the serpent team, his eyes became more fiery, emitting a scarlet light, and said in a low voice, what else? Did you forget something? Hearing this devilish whisper, the Hydra captain trembled in his heart, but still didn't dare to lie and said, my base is in a cave under a dry river channel more than 10 kilometers away. Teammate. I have 3 teammates, they are Peter Parker, Tony Stark, and Camartage's magician Mordo. Hearing these 3 familiar names, Russell knew that these 3 people must not be the 3 he knew. They are probably all evil variants, otherwise they can't get along with the Hydra captain. Russell narrowed his eyes slightly. There is a Plunder Entries system, it would be a lie to say that he is not tempted. Spider-Man's super body, spider telepathy. Iron Man can help you unlock the time tablet. Mordo's secret method is even more useful. When using the furnace overload, the means is no longer a single energy ray, you can cast spells crazily, and you don't have to worry about insufficient energy. But if you go so recklessly, the probability of failure is also very high. First, you have little combat experience. Second, these 3 people are not weak. Especially most of the Spider-Men, not only are they good at fighting, but their punches have a force of more than 10 tons. Even if you don't have a fatal weakness, you can't survive if you are blown up by a punch. And the 3 of them are combined together, with both long-range and short-range attacks, which is even more powerful. After thinking about it, Russell decided to take it one step at a time. As long as the 3 don't leave, there will always be a chance. Step by step, or get the power in front of you first. Russell looked down at the captain of Hydra, and at this moment he did not hide the malice in his eyes at all. Steve understood his look at a glance, and immediately showed an unbelievable look, roaring, you lied to me. How can you break your promise, what kind of hero are you? Hearing this, Russell's eyebrows drooped, and his face was shrouded in shadows. After a few seconds, he suddenly raised his head and showed a smile, it's a pity, I don't want to be a hero in this shitty Marvel world. After the voice fell, he stepped forward without hesitation. The glowing foot directly broke the Hydra captain's neck, drowning out the words in his throat. At the same time, the system's prompt sounded, the entry plunder is complete. Advanced Elite Combat, Green, you can perfectly master the peak human fighting skills, as well as the experience of using most firearms and weapons. Super Serum Special, Green, a mixture of Hydra Super Soldier Blood and Allied Super Soldier Serum. It can bring powerful strength and physical fitness improvement. It can be stacked with Extremis, and the latter's control limit temperature is increased from 1800 to 2600. 009. Russell showed a look of surprise. 1800 degrees increased to 2600 degrees. The melting point of tungsten is 2600, which can almost be regarded as one of the highest melting points among metals. This temperature can melt most alloys, which is undoubtedly a great enhancement. And he also keenly grasped a key point. The temperature increase of Extremis is not because of the Super Soldier Serum, but because of physical fitness. In other words, as long as there are entries that can enhance physical fitness in the future, the high temperature control of Extremis can be increased. I didn't expect it to be a growth entry, what a surprise. Russell sighed and loaded both entries. In an instant, he clearly felt the change in the density of his muscles and bones. The blood also became more viscous, like liquid metal. Every transformation of the heart of the furnace is bursting with more life energy. He couldn't help but wave his fist, making tearing air sounds. The strength is estimated to be increased by more than 3 times. Russell nodded with satisfaction. Now he is confident that even if he encounters the captain of Hydra again, he can defeat him with his body alone. Definitely. The opponent's elite combat entry also made up for his shortcomings, which can be said to be very critical. Then Russell began to plunder the spoils. The Voidland is extremely barren, and everything is good stuff. And he planned to go to the black market to see if he could exchange some supplies. Soon he got an M29 Smith revolver and a Glock 19. More than 10 rounds of Magnum bullets. 3 full magazines filled with 9mm bullets. 2 high-carbon steel daggers. A fist-sized fragmentation grenade and a stun grenade. 3 small bags of compressed biscuits. A tube of white powder of unknown origin. A military water bottle. In the end, Russell didn't even let go of the opponent's combat uniform and windbreaker. Although the hip space is a bit large, it is better than being naked. The situation is special, so you can't care so much. Before leaving, Russell cut his palm, and the blood spilled on the corpse and immediately burned like white phosphorus. In just a dozen seconds, the corpse was burned to charcoal. At the same time, Russell looked at his palm, and the wound on it had healed. Obviously, his physical fitness has improved, and Extremis has been strengthened in almost all aspects. Be a normal captain in the next life, Steve. With a sigh, Russell walked towards the north. That is the location of the black market. After spending a peaceful night in a tree hole, Russell found the valley at noon the next day. It's not that the location is easy to find. But along the way, he saw several cars driving towards the north, and he could also see some teams heading in the same direction. The process was not peaceful. There were even several battles, and several people died. However, since Russell did not get close, and these people did not even leave corpses, he did not recognize which variants they were. Following the track, he soon saw a huge amounts of mines located in the valley in the distance. This place was completely cut out. There is no doubt that this is the black market. In the shadow of the rock, Russell frowned slightly at the mine. He suddenly felt that it was not a good choice to come here as a lone wolf. It was easy to get in, but he might be targeted when he came out. At this moment, the sound of a car roared in the distance. A car with red and gold spray painting came quickly. When passing by, Russell, who was hiding behind the rock, suddenly shrank his pupils. He saw that the driver of the vehicle was a familiar variant. Sunglasses, mustache, steel armor. That was Tony Stark. Sitting in the passenger seat was Maguire's version of Spider-Man, wearing a black suit, which was slightly squirming, making him feel palpitating. Russell guessed that it was probably the clothes that Venom had changed into. Inside the jeep, Peter Parker frowned and looked at the huge rock passing by the window, and suddenly said, "Tony, there is someone behind the rock observing us with malicious intent." Driving with one hand, Iron Man, who was smoking a cigar, did not brake. After exhaling a puff of smoke, he said indifferently, "Relax, Peter, this broken place is full of malicious intent. It's just a fool. If he is still here after we get out, we can kill him." As he said this, he showed an excited look and swallowed his saliva and said, "The auction is more important now. Tisk tisk, you don't know the taste of chili peppers, they are very strong. I brought a micro-reactor today, and I must get this woman. Hearing this, Peter Parker also showed an interested look. He didn't have the opportunity to taste Iron Man's woman in his timeline, but he didn't expect to realize it here. It's exciting to think about it. The two quickly forgot the little episode just now and looked forward to the next auction. In the shadows, Russell's eyes changed. He was very sure that these two people were the variant teammates of the Hydra captain. Now 2 of the 3 people left, and there was only Mordo Magician in the base. This is a rare opportunity. Although Baron Mordo is not necessarily weak. But you can't just wait for pie in the sky to plunder the entries, and the luck of getting the entries at the beginning cannot be copied. If you want to become stronger, you still have to rely on yourself. If you don't want to touch any danger, you are a coward even if you have a system. This is the Marvel world. There are super terrifying multi-powerful people, and there are even stronger ones above them. After the first murder, he didn't have any fear, so he knew that he was never willing to be ordinary. Done. Russell's eyes became more determined than ever at this moment. The next second, the blood vessels under his skin loomed, the heart of the furnace burst out, and he turned into a residual shadow and ran wildly in the direction he came from. 010. Russell didn't know when Iron Man and Spider-Man would go back. But as long as they didn't fly, driving would take some time. He ran like crazy and finished the way he came in less than 2 hours. Then, according to the information from the Snake team, he searched along the dry river and soon saw a cave covered by vines. Although it looked very primitive, Russell saw a parking mark nearby. It was obvious that this was the base of several people. But Russell didn't act rashly. He looked at the vines at the entrance of the cave and his brows gradually frowned. There is magic on it. With the blessing of the knowledge curse on the magic side, he found that he could feel the magic fluctuations on it. Although it was weak, it was like the stars in the night sky that could not be ignored. Warning magic. Really alert. Russell stared at the entrance of the cave and fell into deep thought. Just light a big fire and stew rats in a pot? But if Baron Mordo had a sling ring, he might be able to leave directly. In that case, he would not get any spoils and would alert the enemy. But he had no means to avoid the vines. So should he give up? Russell thought about it and still didn't want to leave. Magic is too important. Even if the overload of the heart of the furnace is not used, this entry will absorb the free energy in the air. That will not only transform the flesh and blood to become stronger, but also continuously accumulate pure energy in the body. In other words, he has the ability to cast spells. Once you get the spell entry, you can use it directly. Time passed by. When the false sunlight changed its position and shone on Russell's face in the shadow, his eyes suddenly lit up, as if he thought of something. After thinking for a few breaths, he took off the Snake Team combat uniform inside the windbreaker, leaving only the windbreaker outside. After zipping up, Russell patted his slightly stiff cheeks, moved his expression, and walked towards the cave after forcing a smile. Then, instead of being cautious, he stood at the entrance of the cave, patted the vines, and shouted, "Is anyone there? Hello. I came here on Captain America's advice. He said I would get help here. Hi, is anyone really there?" Russell was about to continue shouting, when he suddenly found that the vines were slightly shiny, with golden symbols on them, and then twisted and folded like a snake, revealing a patched door behind. He pretended to be curious and said in shock, "Wow! It's amazing." At this time, a warm voice came from behind the door, "It's just a small spell for warning, not worth mentioning." After that, the door was pushed open, and a black man in a brown robe and a red belt walked out. The man said with a friendly smile on his face, "Sir, I just heard you shout, did Captain America call you over?" Russell immediately nodded, "Yes, the captain said it's safe here, and you won't encounter that dark cloud-like monster, so you can rest assured." He said a little embarrassedly, "The captain is such a good man. When I was cut by that group of time guards, I didn't even have clothes, and it was the windbreaker he lent me." At this moment, Russell was a little glad that when he killed the Snake Team, he cut off their necks, and the windbreaker was sleeveless. Mordo had long noticed that the man in front of him was wearing his teammate's windbreaker. Hearing this, some doubts were dispelled. But he was not completely relieved, and smiled gently, "Captain America is such a kind-hearted person, he shouldn't live in this broken place, that group of time guards are the bad guys." Russell nodded heavily, looking like he felt the same way. The corners of Mordo's mouth curved even more, and then he suddenly said, as if he remembered something, "By the way, why didn't the captain escort you back? Where did he go? Russell didn't think about it, and answered very naturally, oh, that's right. On the way back today, he met 2 other teammates who seemed to be going to some black market. The captain said it was more dangerous there, and there were all kinds of people there, so he told me the location and asked me to come back first. It was he who told me about the magic vine at the door. I didn't expect it to be real. It's amazing. Hearing this sigh, Baron Mordo sneered in his heart. What's the fear of danger? Steve was afraid that when he went to the black market, his identity would be exposed by others. After all, their reputation in this area is not good. It's not easy to meet a new sheep in front of him. It would be troublesome if he was exposed. As for meeting teammates, Mordo didn't doubt it. After all, Tony and Peter left in the morning, just to go to the black market. Yesterday morning, a complete port was cut and fell on the plane, and many people got good things. Even Iron Man's girlfriend Pepper was included. The big boss behind the black market then held this auction. He was not interested in these technological things, otherwise he would have followed. At this time, he had no doubts in his heart, and the smile on his face became more enthusiastic, and he laughed very heartily. Look, I'm busy asking, and I don't know how to entertain guests. Come on, my friend, come in with me quickly, it's still too dangerous outside. Being here is like returning home. If you need anything, just tell me, don't be polite. Hearing this, Russell was immediately moved, and excitedly grasped the other's hands, blushing and said, Really? Sir? You are just like the captain, you are really a good person. In that case, I won't be polite. 011. Mordo looked at the man in front of him who was so excited that his face blushed, and his smile became more and more sincere. Good man? Tisk tisk. I will extract your soul for my cultivation in a while. Remove the living organs one by one and sell them for money. The last flesh and blood will be boiled into motor oil. Bones will be snacks for venom. I don't know if you can still call me a good man at that time. Just then, Mordo heard the following sentence, then I won't be polite. He didn't care at all and responded with a smile, definitely you're welcome. Since the captain asked you to come here, it means that he recognizes you. Just tell me if you have any needs, I will definitely meet them. He tightened his hands, indicating that he was relieved. In Mordo's view, the other party's needs are nothing more than food, clothes, rest, and the like. It's not worth money, and it can be compensated in the end anyway. A living person can be decomposed by his hands and sold for a good price in the end. Then, he saw the person in front of him showing a look of surprise, and his eyes were slightly shining. Hey? Really shining? He felt something was wrong for a moment. But before he could react, he felt unbearable pain in his hands. He instinctively wanted to break free, but he felt as if his hands were tightly clamped by pliers. At this moment, even if Mordo was stupid, he knew that he had been deceived. What was in front of him was not a lamb. It was clearly a wolf that came to the door. The other party's sincere smile, at the moment it was extremely dazzling in his eyes. It seemed to be laughing at his stupidity. And what was even more terrifying was, he saw the other party's mouth bulging, as if brewing something. The spiritual intuition from the secret magician made him understand that it was definitely an attack that could threaten his life. FKU. Mordo roared, and without hesitation, he activated the magic power in his body. He did not fight back, but triggered the magic weapon defense. In an instant, a golden barrier burst out from the ruby necklace he was wearing, with lines on it forming a complex pattern. At the same time, a burning thing like magma shot out and hit the shield. The sound of hissing broke out rapidly. The shield was melting. Damn it! Mordo's pupils changed, and he quickly chanted a spell. His eyes suddenly turned red, his muscles bulged, and he exuded a violent aura. Violent secret method. It can greatly increase physical strength. Although there are sequelae, at the moment, I can't care so much. Mordo kicked out, and with the reaction force, his body pulled back and crashed into the house. Russell threw away the 2 charred palms in his hands, smiled grimly, and then rushed in. The area in the cave was unexpectedly large, as much as 300 or 400 square meters. There were workbenches full of machinery, dining tables, sofas, dilapidated fitness equipment, etc., which were very messy. Russell saw Mordo fleeing to another cave at the back at a glance. Losing both hands, the combat power of this secret magician was greatly reduced, and he didn't even think about fighting. Humph! Russell sneered. If he couldn't catch up with a melee magician with his double-strengthened body, he might as well surrender to the changing situation. With a few strides, he caught up with the opponent. His fist became as bright red as lava, and punched the opponent's back. He didn't need a live person, he wanted to kill him quickly. Bang! The previous shield appeared again. But this time it didn't block the attack. It broke directly with a click and turned into a large number of light spots and disappeared. Die! Although the red fist's offensive power weakened, it could still penetrate the flesh and blood body. But at this time, a buzzing sound suddenly came from the entire cave. A large number of golden runes appeared on the irregular rock walls. Russell only felt a flash in front of his eyes, the ground under his feet disappeared, and his body couldn't help falling down. At this moment, his feet had become thousands of feet high in the sky without knowing when. He looked up. Behind a golden portal with a diameter of several meters, Baron Mordo's body was hung on an activated vine. At the moment, he was looking at himself with a sneer on his face. Trap! The opponent's hands were disabled and he couldn't fight back. He ran to that position on purpose to attract himself. Sure enough, except for the Loki variant, there were few idiots who were cut to the void. Go to hell! Mordo laughed wildly. 10,000 meters high. He didn't believe that he couldn't kill the opponent. But at this moment, he saw the opponent suddenly grinning. At the moment of falling was less than 2 seconds, and the falling distance was only 17 meters. My lord, times have changed. Russell reached out to the Glock on his waist without hesitation, aimed in 0.5 seconds, and shot. Bang 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 bang. The third second. The falling distance was 44 meters. The fourth second. The falling distance was 78 meters. Russell had already used up the 15 bullets in the Glock magazine. Wherever he looked, a body was hanging on the vines and swinging back and forth. His eyes lost their spirit, and his face was full of astonishment, regret, and disbelief. The blood on his chest dripped down the portal. Baron Mordo is dead. At this moment, Russell was very grateful for the contribution made by Captain Hydra. The elite combat entry includes the experience of using firearms, which allows him to draw his gun and shoot within 0.5 seconds. Although the environment is very bad, he hit 4 out of 15 bullets. This time he won. At the same time, a familiar system voice came to his ears. The looting entry is completed. 012. Russell did not relax after the kill, but became more nervous. This is 10,000 meters high. Under the effect of air resistance, it will take only about 3 minutes to fall to the ground. If there is no solution to the looting terms, even the body blessed by Extremis and Super Serum will fall into a pool of rotten meat. Now it depends on fate. Looting terms completed. Magic, green, a certain amount of magic energy, 36 units. Note, it has been converted into pure energy. Magic knowledge, green and purple, a part of Baron Mordo's uncontaminated magic knowledge. Secret spell, Vishanti Holy Sword, purple, construct a flaming holy sword with positive energy, the power depends on the amount of energy supplied. Weakness modification, this secret method does not require the consent of the Trinity Vishanti, and can be cast by relying on the energy of the original. Spell, Seraphim Shield, green and purple, construct an all-round 3-dimensional defense spell, the strength depends on the amount of magic supplied. Spell, Rage, green, can stimulate blood factors and gain triple strength and agility. Weakness offset, because of the existence of the heart of the furnace, as long as the spell is used for no more than half an hour, it will not fall into weakness after the end. Spell, Energy Whip, white-green, create a tough energy whip. Spell, Mirror Space, purple-gold, create an independent mirror space, the strength depends on the user. Note, opening the mirror space in the void may cause you to fall into the negative dimension, chaos dimension, and it is extremely difficult to escape. Please use it with caution. Close combat, white, good fighting skills, but not very powerful. Witchcraft, sacrifice, purple, sacrifice flesh and blood to the higher existence in the unknown realm to obtain feedback such as power, knowledge, and secrecy. But there is a high probability that the soul will be polluted by power and marked. Human anatomy, white, understand the structure of the human body. Secret spell, soul extraction. Completely extract the soul of a living person, and the body will not die. Due to the magic from Mephisto, the user will be labeled and his soul will belong to the devil after death. Note, this secret structure is unique and cannot be modified to be supplied by pure energy. Spell weapon construction, green, use magic energy to construct the desired cold weapon. Spell teleportation, purple. You can rely on the sling ring to open a portal. Note, this spell can be promoted. While falling at high speed, Russell's eyes lit up when he heard this spell at first. Camartage secret magicians know all of them, which is the key to escape from the predicament. However, his face froze the next second. Relying on the sling ring. Modo's practice of this spell is not enough to open the door without using the sling ring. Wanla Russell laughed at himself, hoping that there would be more entries to save himself next. After all, the system voice continued. Secret spell Falden's Fire. A powerful green flame from a race of magical energy creatures from another dimension. In addition to attacking with spheres, waves, and jets, it can also remove conventional negative status effects such as disease and poison. And it can be used to counter certain binding spells. Note, this spell is to summon fire to the magic race of the other dimension. The Voidland is outside of time, isolated from the dimension, and cannot be summoned. After killing a magic creature of this kind, the entry is updated to be permanently available. Russell's heart sank again. Very good spell. It's just that it can't be used temporarily, and it can't help me at all. Otherwise, I can imitate Thunderbolt and use Fire Flight. At this time, the system voice sounded again. Magic Energy Shock, white. Simply release the magic shock. All plundering is completed, please ask if you want to load. Russell showed ecstasy in an instant, and said without hesitation, load. If there is no last entry, he will try whether Seraphim Shield can withstand the impact of falling. But with Magic Energy Shock, there is no way out. This most common entry can save lives. The energy ray ability of the powerful mutation entry Heart of the Crucible after overloading has no recoil. But the magic energy impact of the white entry is different. It is very rough. The entry was loaded instantly, and Russell pointed his hands downward without hesitation. Instantly, invisible transparency burst out from his palms, and his body suddenly paused very obviously, slowing down the falling speed, and then accelerating again. It works. Russell was delighted and began to repeat this operation decisively. Falling, recoil, falling. The distance of 10,000 meters began to gradually shorten. After more than 10 minutes. After the last and most intense magic energy impact, Russell fell into the dry river. Cough cough cough. Russell felt as if he was about to be broken, and there were waves of pain in his body, and he couldn't breathe in his chest. If it were an ordinary person, he would be killed even if he could recoil at the speed just now. But the strong physical fitness and Extremis' self-healing only made him feel uncomfortable, and the pain began to decrease rapidly. A few minutes later, Russell slowly got up from the ground. He punched the air hard, laughing wildly. If the bet hadn't been successful at the beginning, if the opponent's hands hadn't been disabled at the beginning, if the magic impact entry hadn't been plundered at the end. This time, I would have been the one to die. But there weren't so many ifs. No matter how thrilling the process was, I succeeded this time. Only the one who won in the end could stand. And high risks bring high returns. Baron Mordo's various spells greatly enriched his shortcomings of single attack and single ability. Magic knowledge and magic power are also excellent trophies. And not only that. Russell turned his head and saw the quiet cave not far away. He guessed that he probably didn't expect the enemy who fell into the trap to survive, and he had to recover the trophies, so Mordo set up the portal next to the base. What an unexpected gain! Russell muttered with a smile, and decisively began to search the house. He even thought of a big gift for the two variants who had not returned yet. 013. As soon as he entered the cave, Russell saw Mordo hanging on the vines. The portal was not closed. The corpse was swaying in the strong wind, blood was dripping from the toes, and his eyes were wide open, looking like he was dying with his eyes wide open. With the magic knowledge he had just acquired, Russell recognized at a glance that the protrusion on the rock wall next to the back door was the switch of the portal. Mordo had deliberately lured him there just now. Otherwise, with the triple speed of Spell Frenzy, he really couldn't catch up with the other party quickly. It's a pity that this guy calculated for a long time, but he didn't expect the enemy to play cards out of the routine. Russell thanked the Snake team for their selfless dedication again, found an empty bottle, and hit the switch accurately. The portal closed instantly, and the strong wind in the room disappeared. Next is the time to sweep. Russell found the defensive magic weapon on Mordo's body. The ruby had been broken, and it looked like it should be disposable. But he didn't regret it. This thing is too weak, and he can make it now. The most important thing is the sling ring. After searching for a long time, Russell found it in the lining of this guy. He can't put all the treasures on the time tablet. With the sling ring and the reality gem, he can leave the void. Whether he can find it or not, he has to try hard. Then Russell changed his clothes, took away all the steel armor parts, 3 small reactors, and a computer. There are all kinds of junk in the void. There are also batteries, light bulbs, some canned food, 2 boxes of wine and other daily necessities. He didn't think about leaving on foot with these things, that's unrealistic. He took them out first because he was afraid that they would be damaged. Now he has a big gift for the other 2 brothers. For example, 2 high-energy bombs. That is to detonate the arc reactor. With the knowledge curse entry obtained from Iron Man, although he can't do a reactor by hand, he can still detonate this thing. And the things needed for remote detonation, Tony Stark is there, and there are also in this base. As for whether it can be blown to death, it depends on God's will. After all, in Iron Man 3, a reactor didn't kill Killian. After moving and hiding everything he wanted, he began to make a remote-controlled bomb. This thing is actually very simple as long as the parts are sufficient. It took him only 20 minutes to make the bomb, and then put it in a cardboard box and stuffed it under the sofa. Then he moved Mordo's body to it, sat down, and hid his arms in his robe. Finally, he took out a piece of paper and wrote a bunch of messages, thanking him for finding so many supplies for himself. After doing all this, Russell left the cave and hid in a high place nearby. He didn't dare to get too close to prevent Spider-Man from finding him. Time passed by minute, and the false sunlight gradually dimmed and finally disappeared. Soon it was late at night, and Russell was still lying on the tree branch motionless, very patient. 2 hours later, the sound of a car engine broke the silence, from far to near. Back. Russell didn't look directly at it, fearing that Spider-Man's spider telepathy would notice it. He just used the corner of his eye to observe the car lights. Until the car stopped at the shore and the engine was turned off, he pressed the switch without hesitation. Because it was impossible to watch the 2 people walk in, he had already practiced the time required to walk into the cave in advance, and the detonator on the reactor had entered the countdown. Bang! Tony Stark slammed the car door shut and cursed, "Damn! Damn fireman! I will blow him into ashes sooner or later." He didn't buy pepper at the auction, and it was bought by mutant firemen. Definitely. The more real reason is that he didn't dare to rob. Although the big boss behind the black market did not allow fighting in the mine, he was afraid that the crazy woman behind firemen would find him. At this time, Peter Parker said unhappily, "Okay, who doesn't know who? Hurry up and take your scrap metal, it's time, I want to go to bed." He was also angry that he couldn't taste Iron Man's wife. Tony didn't choke back. Although he didn't get what he wanted, he still used the reactor to exchange some broken steel armor parts. Those people couldn't understand, but he knew that these armor models were higher level than his own. It is said that they fell with that woman. So he still gained something. The 2 quickly returned to the cave entrance. Just as he was about to step in, Spider-Man stopped suddenly, sniffed and said, "There is a smell of blood." There is no breathing sound in the cave. Something happened. His 5 senses are very strong, and he found these just by hearing. Iron Man's face suddenly changed, his helmet rose, and his mask was buckled. "My stuff!" This guy shouted and rushed in anxiously. Spider-Man wanted to warn that there might be a trap inside, but when he saw that nothing happened when Iron Man went in, he followed him in. The cave was already illuminated by the reactor on Iron Man's chest. He wanted to say goodbye as soon as he entered. Except for the sofa and some broken garbage, the base was plundered cleanly, the kind that would make a mouse cry. Oh, no. There is also Mordo's body. This guy died in a very ugly way, he was shot to death. What a waste of iron. At this time, he saw the message on the body. After picking it up, he asked Iron Man, who was helpless and furious, to read it together. The handwriting on it was messy. "Dear Mr. Tony Stark, Mr. Steve Rogers asked me to say hello to you on his behalf. He said that he felt that he couldn't get along with each other, so he chose to split up. He chose to take the loss and leave the house to you. Oh, Mr. Mordo also agreed. We put him in a prominent position. If you don't believe me, ask him. Finally, I would like to thank Mr. Iron Man for his selfless dedication. We will definitely make good use of the reactor. Spider-Man couldn't help but glance at the bloody hole on Mordo's body and sighed, the bullet hole of the Glock is from Steve. Tony was even more angry, I didn't expect that guy with thick eyebrows and big eyes to betray. Damn it, I should have been alert when he didn't come back last night. Mordo is also a waste. A secret magician can be shot to death. Bah! He kicked the body and the sofa together. Then the two of them saw the reactor bomb hidden underneath at the same time. The countdown on it had reached 12:01. Instantly, the two of them felt numb. FK. FK. 014. Boom. The blazing flames illuminated the night. Russell stood on a tree branch, looking at the explosion below. The two reactors were detonated together, and the power was far more than just 1+1, forming a huge amount of fireballs rising up. Then the shockwave turned into a strong wind, and the forest shook violently. Russell stared at the flames, waiting for the result. 1 second. 2 seconds. 10 seconds. When the fireball dimmed, a pleasant sound like the sound of nature sounded. The Plunder entry is completed. Living Venom Fragment. Chaotic Will is detected, erasing. Erasing completed. Venom Battlesuit, mutation, can be extended, shape-shifting, increase the wearer's strength and speed. And no longer afraid of flames and sound waves. Hearing this, Russell showed a look of surprise. Unexpectedly, Venom's weaknesses disappeared. It seems that these weaknesses do not come from matter, but from Venom's will. This is a surprise. Not to mention the buffs brought by the battlesuit, at least you don't have to explode your clothes after using the ability of Extremis. Armor Master, Purple, Tony Stark's ability to forge armor, as well as related scientific and technological knowledge. All looting is complete, would you like to load? Is this the end? Russell was a little surprised. There is no curse of knowledge, Heart of the Furnace, but there is an additional Armor Master? Is it that the same entry cannot be infinitely refreshed, or that the entries of these variants are different? Or both? Russell didn't think about it, and silently said in his heart, load. The power of the entry was acquired instantly. The next second he jumped off the branch without hesitation, and the moment he landed, the dark liquid spread on his body surface, forming a battlesuit with red-gold patterns. Then he ran towards the direction of the river. Venom is dead. Iron Man is dead. Spider-Man is still alive. But Russell has reason to believe that even if Venom absorbs the damage, the opponent will definitely be seriously injured. Ahem. Peter Parker slowly climbed out from the edge of the deep pit, and then breathed in big gulps of cool air. After feeling better, he turned his head and looked into the pit. Iron Man fell to the ground in his battlesuit, motionless. The surface of the metal armor was almost undamaged, but it was glowing red, and a smell of barbecue emanated from it. Obviously, the armor was shockproof but not heatproof, and Tony Stark had become a roasted chicken in a stew pot. Peter Parker showed a trace of fear in his eyes. If he hadn't ordered the Venom to expand and wrap himself at the moment before the explosion, he would have turned into charcoal at the moment, no better than Tony. Although Spider-Man's body is tough and strong, it can't resist the tens of thousands of degrees of high temperature at the moment of the explosion. And he can feel that he is still injured, his internal organs have been displaced, and there are small cracks. Fortunately, Spider-Man's physique can self-heal. It's a pity that the Venom battlesuit is gone, he is very fascinated by the feeling of being wrapped in full power. At this time, a cool breeze blew. Peter Parker shuddered. Without Venom, am I so sensitive? But this thought didn't last for half a second, and his face suddenly changed. No. This is spider telepathy. Without hesitation, he followed his instinct to roll to the side to avoid it. At this moment, the night sky was bright. A 5-meter-long and half-meter-wide flaming sword appeared and fell from the air. Boom! The ground trembled, and a large amount of soil and gravel splashed around, forming a big pit again. Peter Parker was shocked and angry, and looked up suddenly. At a glance, he saw a man wearing a black battlesuit with red and gold patterns standing on the bank of the river. The other party looked at him coldly, without hiding the malice in his eyes. You killed Mordo and then modified the reactor bomb. Peter Parker stood up slowly, his expression ferocious. Russell shook his head slightly. No, I guessed wrong? Peter Parker was stunned. But at this moment, Russell showed 2 rows of white teeth and grinned, "You don't mention Steve Rogers. The great Hydra captain is the first to die." Hearing this, the angry Peter Parker felt as if he was instantly poured with a bucket of cold water. The other party planned step by step and easily hunted down his 3 teammates. And now that the other party is standing here, it means that he is confident that he can eat him. It seems that the person in front of him is Spider-Man, and he and others are just insects that fell into the spider web. At this time, he suddenly heard a voice from the other side, "Can I know why you were cut into the void?" Peter Parker said with a gloomy face, "MJ, that BCH, is my girlfriend, and she is still flirting with Harry. So I killed that BCH in front of my good brother, and then sent him to hell to see his father." Russell smacked his lips. Although he knew that the other party was affected by venom, this guy was not so cruel in the normal timeline. The bully Maguire is as simple as Teletubbies compared to you. In the distance, Peter Parker, who has the night vision ability, caught the enemy's distraction in an instant, and his eyes lit up. Good opportunity. He did not hesitate at all and turned his wrist to the side. The erupting cobweb instantly stuck to a huge amount of stone, and then swung it hard, and it suddenly turned into a cannonball and whistled towards the enemy. If it was Russell who had just crossed over, he might not be able to react. But at the moment he had undergone a drastic change. Just in time. Russell did not dodge, and his hands quickly outlined shining golden lines in the air. The magic circle was quickly formed, and then pushed forward. In an instant, a huge amount of polyhedral energy shield was formed. Carrying huge power, the stone like a cannonball hit it and did not cause any damage. Instead, the stone originally shattered. The defense is really good. And this is not his maximum energy output, otherwise it can be stronger. Russell sighed in his heart, and felt more and more that it was the right choice to destroy Mordo's hands before. Otherwise, he might have fallen in the first step. Suddenly Russell laughed, "Mr. Spider-Man, why did you run so suddenly? Didn't you say goodbye?" Peter Parker didn't want to avenge his teammates, and he didn't know the enemy's strength, and he was injured. In addition, this is not Spider-Man's terrain at all. At the moment, if he didn't run, he would be crazy. He is not the arrogant Tony Stark. But how could Russell let him go? He put his hands on his chest and twisted the magic circle, and then swung his right hand forward. Suddenly, a magical energy whip was swung out. The whip extended rapidly, breaking through the distance of dozens of meters in the blink of an eye, and was about to wrap around Spider-Man's neck. But at this moment, Peter Parker suddenly turned his head to avoid it. Spider telepathy. Then he raised his right hand and grabbed the end of the whip that was about to wrap around him. In an instant, he felt a huge amount of power coming from it. The power of this magician was even stronger than that of the Snake team. He was very surprised. But Peter Parker sneered. He has never been afraid of anyone in terms of strength. What's more, this is exactly what he wants. The next moment he snorted coldly, his muscles bulged slightly, and he burst out with unparalleled power. In an instant, the energy whip was no longer stretched straight. The magician in the distance was like a fish caught by a hook, being pulled and flying over. Peter Parker took a step back. He arched his body and charged his right fist. He wanted to punch through the magician's body. The distance was getting closer and closer. 40 meters. 30 meters. 10 meters. At this moment, he suddenly saw a sly smile on the enemy's face, and the panic faded. Before he could react why, he saw the man grab the air with his other hand, and a blazing flaming sword condensed in his hand. In an instant, Peter Parker's scalp was numb, and spider telepathy was crazy. But it was too late to dodge. He instinctively raised his arm to resist, and at the same time exerted force on his feet, trying to dodge. Swish! The two crossed and passed each other, and the flaming holy sword was like a golden line crossing the dark space. Bang! Russell landed lightly on the ground, took a step forward and turned calmly. Wherever he looked, Spider-Man knelt on one knee on the ground, trembling all over. His right arm was cut off at the root, and fell into the mud like an orphan. 015. Russell was quite satisfied with the spell of Vishanti Holy Sword. It has powerful long-range attack power. It is indestructible when used in close combat. He hardly felt any resistance when the sword went down just now. It was a pity. Spider-Man's reaction was too fast, otherwise his head would have fallen off. But it didn't matter. It was a fight between trapped beasts, and the victory was already decided. Russell reversed his grip on the holy sword of flame and threw it out like a javelin. Spider-Man didn't even turn his head back, and even though he lost an arm, he still rolled nimbly to avoid the attack. At the same time, he turned his body sideways and raised his wrist, and a bunch of sticky cobweb sprayed towards Russell like a storm. "Wow, you are the upgraded version of Super Spider-Man," Russell complained, but did not choose to dodge. Instead, he raised one arm, and the golden spell lines quickly formed a shield, embedded in his arm. Spell weapon construction. Although it is only a green entry, it is simple and has no pre-casting. Bang, bang, bang. More than a dozen balls of cobweb all stuck to it and were blocked. But this is just a feint. Spider-Man didn't think it would be so easy to hit the opponent. At the moment when cobweb hit the shield, he also arrived. At this moment, Russell's eyes have reflected Spider-Man jumping in the air and swooping down to attack. He seems to have no time to do anything. "This time I want to see how you cast the spell," Spider-Man roared, and was about to punch the magician's dog head in front of him. However, at this moment, he suddenly felt his scalp tingling. Spider telepathy appeared again. How is this possible? Spider-Man's eyes were bloodshot. He couldn't understand how the opponent could threaten him at this point and at such a close distance. Even if he could build a fire sword out of thin air again, he would definitely not have time to raise it to attack him. Absolutely impossible. Spider-Man suspected for the first time that his ability was wrong, and he couldn't change direction in mid-air. He roared, bursting out with 200% strength, vowing to kill the enemy with one punch. However, at this moment, he suddenly saw the opponent's pupils glowing slightly, emitting the color of molten gold, and his chest bulged high without knowing when. The next moment, his chest sank, and a flaming meteor instantly cut through a distance of less than 2 meters. Plop! The sound of falling sounded. Russell dissipated the spell shield and smacked his mouth. Although this trick is useful, it is really painful to bite your tongue every time. However, looking at Spider-Man who fell to the ground, holding his throat tightly with one hand, with his eyes full of disbelief, regret and anger, he still smiled with satisfaction. "No wonder you and Mordo are teammates. Even the look in your eyes before death is exactly the same. What a tacit understanding. Haha, if you had fought with me from the beginning, you might have had a chance. I didn't expect you to turn around and run away. You must be the stupidest and most cowardly Spider-Man I have ever seen." Peter Parker was originally covering his wound with one hand. When he heard this, his expression suddenly twisted, and he let go of his hand, and yelled with blood foam in his mouth, "Do you know what Spider-Man terrain is? FKU. After saying this, the arterial wound on his neck spurted blood crazily, and he died directly. Decedent is the greatest. Russell happily forgave Mr. Peter Parker's impolite behavior, and a pleasant system voice came to his ears. The plundering entry is completed. Spider Totem. Purple Gold, the source of power for all Spider-Man in multi-universe attributes, magic. Possessing this totem can gain super strength, agility, insight, climbing, spider telepathy. Super strength, a punch can produce 25 tons of force. Agility, the body is more flexible and can perform incredible actions while increasing speed. Environmental perception, insight into the information of the surrounding environment, the position, shape, and motion state of objects. It can quickly adapt to complex environments and make accurate judgments. For example, when shuttling in a narrow space or climbing between buildings, it can accurately find support points and footholds. Note, this ability can also enhance the accuracy of magic construction and release. Climbing, you can climb on objects with non-zero friction at any angle. Spider telepathy, perception of subtle changes in the surrounding environment, and can feel the malice and danger from others. Hearing this, Russell smiled with satisfaction. Although he was a little surprised that Spider-Man's power came from magic, he had to say that the ability brought by the totem was really strong. Super strength completely crushed Extremis and Serum, and agility plus the elite fighting of the Snake team became more powerful. The most important thing is spider telepathy. What he values most is the perception of malice. It will definitely be very useful for walking the timeline in the future. Spouting Cobweb, Blue, Physiological Rejection, Mutation. Magical Cobweb, Mutation, from launching cobweb from the flesh holes on the left and right wrists, to launching cobweb from the magic mark. The toughness of this cobweb is doubled, and it can be cancelled at will. Hearing this change, Russell immediately loaded the entry, and then raised his hands to look. I saw a black and purple totem the size of a fingernail file appeared on both wrists. Without practice, Russell instinctively knew how to control it. He raised his right hand and swung it, and with his mind, a deep purple cobweb shot out, accurately hitting a boulder on the river bank, and the end stuck to it firmly. As he exerted force suddenly, the spider web did not break, and a rock weighing 5 or 6 tons was pulled out of the soil. The next second, he moved his mind, and the cobweb instantly dissipated like air, leaving no trace. Really good! Russell exclaimed. He was originally worried that a hole would grow randomly on a part of his body, but he didn't expect that this ability would actually transform into a magic cobweb. Beautiful and practical. And even stronger. He even guessed that the magic cobweb might be used to weave spider web arrays. Just as Russell was imagining the future, the harsh voice of the system suddenly sounded. Warning! In the multi-universe, the Malone family is hunting all beings with spider totems. 016. Morlun family. Multi-universe. Hunting. These 3 words combined are somewhat shocking. Russell didn't expect that Spider-Man's ability came from something other than magic, but from prey. It's hard to imagine what kind of existence the Morlun family is. All the Marvel information he talked about was learned through some short videos before the time travel, or the popular science made by a certain station up. There are certain limitations. But Russell was not very panicked. He is still trapped in the void, and it is meaningless to think too much. It may not be long before the day comes. With the Plunder Entry system, time is power for him. Thinking of this, Russell couldn't help but sneer. Who will be the hunter and who will be the prey at that time is still uncertain. But this warning made him think of another question. The sacred timeline and multi-universe seem to be a little unreasonable. Now Loki has not yet ascended to the gods at the end of time, and the sacred timeline has not been liberated. How does the Morlun family hunt Spider-Man in the multi-universe? Also, in his memory, the 616 universe of Marvel Comics and the 616 universe of the movie are obviously different. The most obvious one is mutant. The former has it. The latter doesn't. Also, if once a time branch appears, the time change situation will be cut immediately, then the female Loki Sivir should be cut at birth, not in childhood. The same is true for other Loki variants. Russell thought about it, and maybe there is only one possibility. Some variants are not time branches, but characters on other timelines that have been bound by the TVA time-weaving machine. But even so, it can't explain the multi-universe formed after the liberation of the sacred timeline, which is different from the multi-universe in the comics. There must be some secrets in it. Even the so-called Marvel universe seems to have been wrapped in the Disney universe, and it seems to have become more complicated. Forget it, don't think about it. Russell sighed. Again, I haven't even reached the level Godfather yet, so it's useless to think too much. Work hard to become stronger, and all problems will naturally be solved. Boom. At this time, purple lightning lit up in the distant sky. Russell took a look, and suddenly he had no idea, so he turned around and ran. A huge amount of monster was vaguely visible. It could be the violent sound of the explosion, or it could be the magic fluctuation, and the time monster appeared. Fortunately, this thing does not eat dead things. Russell did not have to worry about his supplies being eaten, and he ran madly along the river. Spider-Man's speed and venom battle suit buff and super serum and Extremis. He ran very fast, almost like a car at full speed, and ignored the terrain. He has the heart of the furnace and good endurance. After running all the way, Russell finally found a cut-off shabby house in a forest and broke in without hesitation. Both the Loki TV series and Deadpool 3 show that as long as you hide in the barrier of dead things, Elrios will not find it. Bang! Enter the door and close the door. Run into the room. Then get under the bed. All in one go. Lying peacefully on the ground. Da-da-da. Bang! Enter the door, close the door. Run into the room. Then crawl under the bed. All in one go. Serene, soft touch. Who? The woman suddenly opened her eyes wide, and her palms ejected sharp blades. But before she could turn around, she was locked tightly in an arm. The next second, a warm breath was exhaled in her ear. Woman, do you want to attract Elrio's attention? Laura stopped struggling immediately, motionless, and even her breathing became weak. The daytime world is very dangerous, and she has the ability of night vision, so she always goes out at night to collect supplies. I didn't expect to encounter a time monster this time, and I didn't expect that there would be someone under the bed of a broken house. Russell didn't expect that he would run to such a place and still meet someone. From the sound, it should be a girl, about 16 years old. Although she is not old, she has good capital. I tightened the other person's body with my arms, and I could clearly feel it. At the moment, feeling that the girl in his arms stopped struggling, he also breathed a long sigh of relief. Elriose is still very powerful. Loki and Sylvie can control this time monster with mental magic, but it is just a script written by the survivors. Otherwise, these two little Kayla will not have a hair left. If the girl is stupid, he will have to consider using the portal after killing the other party. But because he only has this affected position in his mind, the farthest he can go is to the black market. In terms of the range of Elriose's activities, it is very likely that he is still in the other party's hunting area. And it is unknown whether there is any danger on the other side of the portal. This is why he chose to run away instead of teleporting. Time passed by. Russell began to feel a little uncomfortable. The girl fell sideways and came in backwards, so she didn't find him at the first time. But this also made the girl fit him perfectly after being imprisoned by him. It was like he was hugging the other party tightly. Zero distance fit, temperature rise, smell, plus the arm was placed in a place where it shouldn't be, so. Laura also felt something and felt a little uncomfortable. She whispered in a mosquito-like voice, "You hit me. And let go of your hand, don't worry, I won't attack you." Russell didn't believe it. When the girl found him, she wanted to attack immediately. There was no guarantee that this guy would not continue after Elriose left. As for Ge, there was even less that could be done. Sometimes he had no say in certain things. Just bear with it. It's time to be hypocritical. Russell whispered back. Laura did not refute, her face slightly red. She was 16 years old, and she was not some brainless fairy tale heroine. She definitely knew what it was. But she was only 16 years old. She was cut into the void 3 years ago and had no experience in this regard. At the moment, she was a little overwhelmed and could only passively bear it. As time passed, Laura could not help but whispered, "It's a bit hot." Russell was also hot, and even more uncomfortable. He thought for a moment and whispered, "How long does it usually take for Elriose to leave?" Laura felt a little dizzy at the warm breath beside her ear, but she still whispered back, "Usually he'll stay in one place for 2 to 4 hours, devouring all the living things exposed in the area. The same is true at night." Hearing this, Russell smiled bitterly. "It looks like he'll have to suffer for a few more hours." 017. The night in the void is cold. At first, Laura felt very embarrassed, but as time went by, this feeling became weaker and weaker. After all, the situation was urgent and there was no way, and the other party did not do it on purpose. And this person had not taken the opportunity to kill him before. With the power of the other party locking him, he should be able to do it easily. It is rare to meet a good person in the void. After thinking it through, the uncomfortable feeling of being hot together suddenly turned into warmth. In the 3 years in the void, she felt that the night was not so cold for the first time. The warm breath even made her sleepy, and it became stronger and stronger. "Don't sleep, Laura. You are in someone else's arms. What if the other party has bad thoughts after Elriose leaves? It's over." Laura tried to open her eyes wide and warned herself in her heart. An hour later, Russell suddenly heard something and was speechless. What the hell is going on? The rhythmic, even and subtle breathing sound all explained a fact. The little girl in his arms fell asleep. This is too much. With a sigh in his heart, Russell was relieved. Others are not embarrassed, why should I be embarrassed? Thinking of this, his brother also chose to return to reason. The room was dark, and in the quiet environment, only the even and rhythmic breathing sound came from his ears. So, after a day of high concentration, Russell, who had fought twice in a row, seemed to be infected, and the more he listened, the sleepier he became. Can't sleep. Russell stared at the bed with his eyes wide open, as if he wanted to see something. What if this woman wakes up the next day and stabs me directly? Without the threat of Elriose, maybe it's the enemy. Although there are no fatal parts in the body, even if the head is stabbed, it won't die, but it still hurts. Absolutely. Absolutely can't sleep. Hugging the girl who was soft and warm like a big pillow, Russell slept very sweetly that night, and didn't even dream. Until he felt something bulging in his arms. Russell suddenly opened his eyes. Just looking at each other with sleepy eyelids, it was obvious that they also opened their eyes at the same moment. The sky was already bright. The two of them had been hugging each other face to face without knowing when. He put his arm around her shoulders, she hugged his waist, staring at each other face to face. "You're annoying me again." Laura, who had just woken up and was still a little dazed, blurted out instinctively. But she came back to her senses immediately, and her face turned red at a speed visible to the naked eye. Russell originally thought that he didn't mean it, after all, it was like this when he just woke up, but at the moment he was stunned, the red temperature of this little girl was comparable to his own Extremis. "No." Russell blinked his eyes and found out in surprise. "Isn't this girl X-23 Laura? I was wondering how claws could pop out from the gaps between fingers." At this moment, his arms felt lighter, and Russell saw Laura suddenly pupated like a puppy, and quickly crawled out from under the bed. Then he heard hurried footsteps and the sound of a door being slammed open. Russell shook his head and laughed. "How ruthless you run away after sleeping. Scumbag." He slowly crawled out from under the bed with a sigh, stretched his body in front of the sunlight coming in through the window. It was just a joke just now. He hasn't slept so comfortably for a long time. As for the other party running away, he didn't feel anything. It's not a pity for Wolverine X's self-healing genes. He is not a good guy, but he is not a bad guy with pus on the soles of his feet. There are still choices for looting entries. Otherwise, the moment he opens his eyes and recognizes the other party, he can kill the other party in seconds. Wolverine can't live without a head. After moving his body, Russell also walked out of the house. Next, he will build a shelter and use the computer he got from Tony Stark to try to crack the time tablet. As for the power supply, he left one of the 3 reactors, which can generate power wirelessly. Recalling the route last night, Russell walked in the direction he came from. But not long after, he suddenly heard the sound of running in the distance. Then he saw the little wolf girl appear in sight, running wildly. At this time, he saw that the other party also obviously saw him. But after a moment of hesitation, he actually gritted his teeth, and then ran away to the right, and disappeared after a few seconds. "No, do I look so scary?" Russell touched his face, a little confused. You know, he is a school grass level in school. If he hadn't kept himself clean, I don't know how many baby death machines he would have used. As a result, this little wolf girl ran away when she saw him, and twice. This is a bit of a blow. Just when Russell was doubting his life, he suddenly heard a sound from afar again. This time it was the roar of a motorcycle. Soon, 3 motorcycles with a very wasteland style flashed from a distance, with a total of 5 people sitting on them, screaming and chasing in the direction of the little wolf girl. Looked very excited. Russell immediately understood that the little wolf girl didn't run away when she saw him, but didn't want to implicate him. After figuring it out, he felt much better. Moreover, if you lead me here, I really might not help you now. Hehe, you are a scumbag, but I can't be a scumbag. Russell laughed and talked to himself, his pupils slightly shining, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. 018. Boom. Boom. The sound of the engine idling was getting louder and louder. In a valley, 3 motorcycles occupied 3 directions and stopped in place. On them sat several unkempt men wearing dirty clothes, laughing maliciously at the moment. Haha, I haven't seen such a beautiful girl in a long time. She's so young, she looks like a virgin. By the way, can you tell whose variant this is? This is the first time I've seen it. Why bother so much? She just ran away when she saw us. She can't be very strong. Bob is right. Remember not to scratch your skin later. The price will be too different. The expressions of several people were relaxed. It seemed that they didn't regard the women in the middle as opponents at all. Then one of the men wearing a worn-out jacket and a beard got off the car. He pulled out the short knife from his waist, threw it up and caught it again and again. Without any vigilance on his face, he just walked over. Until he got close, the man showed a greasy and disgusting smile, stretched out his big hairy hand and wiped it towards the woman's face. Swoosh! The sharp blade popped out, and the reflected light flashed. Without seeing the action clearly, Laura's steel claws had already penetrated the man's head from the bottom to the top, from the chin, with sharp claws. Swish! Blood splattered, Laura pulled out the steel claws, slightly bent her waist, posed an offensive posture, and made a fierce expression. The disguise worked. Kill one person, and the pressure of the battle will be less in a while. However, when she looked up, she found that the expressions of the remaining 4 people on the motorcycle were very calm. Laura's heart tightened. Something is wrong. She is not a fledgling. After Wolverine died, she had fought many times with the mutant teenagers. Disguise was learned at that time. And now these enemies are neither angry because of the death of their teammates, nor regretful and shocked after seeing his ability. Instead, they show a strange satisfied smile. The ability has been tested. Well, it's probably a variant of Wolverine. The self-healing factor is a bit troublesome. It's a pity that the electromagnetic car can't be driven in the woods, otherwise it would be the easiest to deal with this kind of alloy bones. The few people completely ignored Laura and just chatted. At this time, the corpse on the ground disappeared like a phantom. The blood that splashed on the ground and remained on the steel claws was the same, as if it was just an illusion just now. Looking at this weird scene, Laura bent her body, a little at a loss. At this time, someone on the motorcycle said, "Hey, who will go?" "I won't go, it hurts too much." "You go." "Stop hesitating, I'll go." A man wearing a baseball cap who looked only in his 20s and had many freckles on his face got off the car. Then he actually rushed directly towards Laura. Such a move made Laura stunned. Knowing his ability, he still came to close combat. Is he a fool, or is he confident? Just when she lost consciousness, the other party had already rushed over. She followed her fighting instinct, dodged, and swung her claws. Puff! Blood splattered, and the neck was pierced. The kill was successful. However, the next second, the body disappeared again. It was still fake. At this time, Laura saw another person abandoning the motorcycle and rushing over. Consuming my physical strength? What is the point of this tactic? Laura couldn't figure it out, but still swung her claws to attack. Puff! Still a one-shot kill. At this time, the man who said "I won't go, it hurts too much" took over the responsibility of attacking without hesitation and launched a new round of charge. Laura's expression was serious, and she was not careless at all. This time, she saw through the weakness and swung her claws forward. Puff! The sound of flesh and blood being pierced sounded, but it was a little more dull. Sizzle! Yellow smoke burst out wildly from the wound, and Laura wanted to retreat but it was too late. After inhaling, her whole body was numb and she fell to the ground with a plop. Hee, I finally got fooled on the motorcycle, the last man with messy hair smiled playfully, with a cunning look in his eyes. Laura tried desperately to stand up again, but found that she had no strength at all, and suddenly there was a trace of despair in her eyes. It's over. The self-healing factor doesn't work. Seeing that the plan was successful, the man slowly walked to Laura and said with a proud look, after observing several times, I changed my charging posture. Sure enough, your last blow pierced through the heart. I have a special poison there to deal with self-healers like you. Magician stuff is really useful. After catching the little wolf girl, the man was obviously very excited. At the moment, he introduced himself, "Oh, by the way, my name is Jimmy Madrock, and my ability is duplication." "Jimmy?" Laura said with an expression of incomprehension, "Are you mutant? I saw your name in X-Men." Jimmy half squatted with a smile, "Then you remembered the wrong person, I am a member of Brotherhood." Poof! Laura suddenly raised her foot, and the sharp blade that popped out of it pierced Jimmy's head. After doing this step, she fell back with a plop, and then gasped heavily. She definitely knew that Jimmy was a member of Brotherhood, and she had read X-Men comics countless times. Just now, it was just to attract the other party to get closer and make the final blow. Fortunately, it succeeded. Laura let out a long breath. This time she really had no strength left. However, at this time, the sound of a motorcycle came from the bottom of the mountain again, and stopped in the valley half a minute later. The next second, a laughing voice sounded, "You really have no strength this time, right?" As footsteps sounded, the two men walked to a position 2 meters away from Laura. Laura looked at the two people who appeared again, and this time she really showed despair. At this time, the man with heavy forehead wrinkles, sparse hair, and a face that looked like a British guy started to compliment, "Jimmy, you are really amazing. You can subdue Wolverine's variant just by duplication. You are much stronger than Fireman, you should be the captain." Jimmy lowered his head and glanced at the little wolf girl who couldn't even speak. A hint of complacency flashed in his eyes, and then he smiled. Don't say that, Siren. Fireman's combat power is much stronger than mine. I am very convinced that he should be the captain. You are convinced, you are pretending to be your mother. No wonder firemen can lead a team, but you can only ride a motorcycle. Siren cursed in his heart and smiled and replied, you are too modest, Jimmy. Jimmy smiled, and this time he didn't refute, but said, I still trouble you to carry him. His Edelman skeleton is too heavy, and I don't have enough strength. Damn, it sounds like I am a power-type mutant, FK. She cursed again in her heart, but the siren did not refute, and bent down to pick up the little wolf girl on the ground. Laura looked desperate, this time she really couldn't fight back. Looking at the disgusting hand that slowly reached out, she couldn't help but think of the arm that hugged her last night. Warm and powerful. Now that she thought about it, she must have felt the long-lost sense of security at that time and fell asleep. Maybe if she had just run towards the other party, it would have been a different ending. But in just a moment, she drove this idea out of her mind. It was because she was not careful enough that she was caught. How could she blame others? Maybe the warm embrace last night was God's last gift to Luluaksu. She should be content. Laura slowly closed her eyes, not wanting to look at the palm that was about to touch her, and the stranger who appeared in her mind was the stranger last night. At this time, she suddenly found that the other party was really good looking. Although he was Asian, it was the first time she saw such a good-looking man. And his voice was also very nice. Hey, if you move your hand down a little bit more, I will suck out your soul, believe it or not. The threatening voice was so real. Laura was a little surprised with her eyes closed. Did she imagine that person speaking? Just when she was still a little confused, the voice sounded again, I'm sorry, as a boyfriend, I can't let you take her away. Laura opened her eyes suddenly. The greasy palm had retracted, and its owner and Jimmy were looking at the distance with gloomy faces. She followed the line of sight of the two and tried to turn her head to look. What she saw was the figure that appeared in her mind. The other party really came. For a moment, Laura had a strong surprise and uncontrollable worry. Surprised that the other party came to save herself. Worried that the other party would be implicated by herself. At this time, she saw that the other party noticed something and suddenly looked at her. The next second, Russell smiled very unceremoniously, Hey, girl, it's too naive to think that I will run away after sleeping. Laura was completely stunned. In her eyes, at this moment, the light through the tree canopy formed a beam of light that sprinkled on the other person. At a glance, it seemed that she saw the shining angel. 019. Boy. Mutant Sean, nicknamed Siren, said gloomily, heroes saving beauties must also see the situation clearly. This is the prey of Lady Cassandra, you'd better not meddle in other people's business. As long as you are in this area, no one does not know how powerful that woman is. He believes that the other party should know how to choose. At this time, Jimmy patted his teammate on the shoulder and blamed, Don't be so fierce to Siren, making us look like villains. Don't forget that we are no longer working in brotherhood. As he said, he turned his head to look at Russell not far away, showing a kind expression, and said sincerely, This brother. There are many women in the Void Land. How can there be true love if they sleep with each other for one night and then run away? Why don't you go back to the base with us? This credit will be counted as one of the three of us. When Lady Cassandra pulls out the claws of this little wolf and collects them, the rest will be for you to play with, and if you get tired of playing, you can sell it for a good price. Hearing this, Laura's heart sank silently. On one side is a high-risk battle. On one hand, you can join a big organization in the Void Land, get rewards, and yourself. This seems to be a good choice. No one will refuse. The siren still looked fierce, as if a little unhappy. Jimmy smiled and waited for a response. Russell was silent, as if thinking. The forest fell into silence again. A few seconds later, Russell suddenly sighed and showed embarrassment, I wanted to agree, but who told me to play big? A little girl without claws is not interesting. He looked at Jimmy and tried, how about you kneel down and beg me? I am a soft-hearted person. I can install you into a handsome Iron Man. Maybe that crazy woman will fall in love with you at once. Then the captain of the firemen you are jealous of will kneel down and lick you. The smile on Jimmy's face disappeared. He lied to the other party from the beginning, and all he said were lies. But it was obvious that this man was not fooled at all, but acted like a joker. He took a step back. The siren smiled grimly and took a step forward. Damn, I always act with you, but in the end, you still have to rely on me. Stupid clone, your brain is also divided equally. Boy. He stared at Russell fiercely. What kind of person do you want to save people? I will suck you dry in a while. As soon as the voice fell, his sparse red hair turned grey and his face turned pale. At this moment, he did not look like a siren, but like a vampire. And in fact, it was because of this change that he was cut by TVA. Laura, who fell to the ground, suddenly showed anxiety. She was very moved, but she was afraid that Russell would die to save her. The ability of this mutant looked very strange, and the powerful power might be useless. Go. She tried to say a word. Go? Wishful thinking. After saying that, the siren suddenly opened its mouth. Instantly, circles of visible sound waves burst out, covering the distance. The speed of the sound waves burst was subsonic. Jimmy believed that people who didn't know the siren's ability would definitely suffer a big loss suddenly. Maybe he could solve the opponent in one go. However, the smile on his face stopped before it rose, and his eyes showed an incomprehensible look. The sound wave fell into the air, only smashing a tree behind the opponent. The man opposite seemed to have predicted the future. He actually jumped lightly at the moment the siren opened his mouth, and cleverly avoided the sound wave. The siren's face also showed astonishment, and blurted out, "Do you know me? Do you know my ability?" Russell stood on a tree branch, tilted his head, thought for a while and said, "I don't think I know him. Bald Englishman like you are hard to forget after meeting once. I don't remember anyone so ugly." The siren was almost furious. What he hated most was being called bald. Looking for death. In an instant, the sound wave burst out again. However, no matter how fast this ability is, it has a pre-swing. He has to charge and open his mouth to aim at the enemy. With spider telepathy, Russell can easily avoid it. For a while, there was a constant roar in the woods. The siren was like a satellite spirit, shaking his head and chasing Russell who was jumping in the woods. Bang bang bang. After smashing a few more trees, the cloak he was wearing behind him suddenly swelled up without wind. The next second, he suddenly flew out on the spot. Like a cannonball, with sound waves wrapped around his body, he crashed into Russell who was jumping in the air. "You like jumping, don't you? See how you can dodge this time." He roared and was about to hit the other person to death. On the ground, Laura was so angry when she saw this scene that her eyes were bloodshot. No. She struggled to get up with strength from nowhere, but the anesthetic made by the magician was still taking effect. She fell to the ground again with a plop. Her chin and face were covered with mud. At this moment, she had never hated herself so much for being weak, and once again implicated others. But at this moment, a chuckle sounded. "Do you know what Spider-Man terrain is?" The purple magic cobweb was as beautiful as a meteor, passing through the space in an instant and hitting a tree trunk. Just when the sea monster wrapped in high-energy sound waves was about to hit Russell. The latter's body seemed to be pushed by the invisible force and moved sideways in an instant. The sea monster passed by and suddenly stopped in mid-air, turning its head to look in surprise. Puff puff puff. The reward was a bunch of cobwebs that covered his face. What the hell? The siren struggled to tear off the spider web on his face. Before he opened his eyes, he heard his teammates shouting, "Be careful!" What be careful? He opened his eyes, and then he knew what to be careful of. A foot wrapped in a battlesuit was rapidly enlarging in front of him. He thought it must be 23 yards. Bang! The siren was kicked away. But before he could react, the next attack hit him again. Far away. Jimmy's face was panicked, and his eyes were full of shock. He saw that the man who should be a Spider-Man variant constantly launched cobwebs and shuttled back and forth in the woods. And his teammate Siren. Not to mention counterattacks, even the body can't be controlled. Like a broken puppet, it was constantly hit repeatedly from various angles, and screamed. Until the end, with a bang, it was kicked from bottom to top, and then it was trembling and frozen in the air. At some point, a purple spider web was woven. The siren, with her cloak spread out, was like a moth, firmly trapped in the center of the spider web, with her head lowered, without a sound. The next second, a shadow fell. A face with a terrifying smile, hanging upside down in front of me, said something extremely creepy. Brother, it's your turn. Next. 020. Jimmy wanted to say, if you hit him, don't hit me. But he knew that was impossible. Seeing his teammates suffering, he chose not to suffer. Bang! The wrist that fired the gun was grabbed, and the bullet passed by his scalp. Want to die? Russell looked at Jimmy, who wanted to commit suicide, and figured out the key in an instant, and said in surprise, I didn't expect you to be a duplication. I really underestimated you. This is the first time he has seen such a coward, and he really deserves to live in the void. But it doesn't matter. Although it is impossible to plunder the duplication's entries. But from this guy's point of view, it is not himself who copied the duplication. So even if he plundered the entries, it is likely to be just an ordinary duplication. But this does not mean that the duplication in front of him is useless. Russell looked at the dazed replica in front of him, and suddenly showed a very friendly smile. Want to die more easily? As he spoke, his palm turned slightly red. Squeak! The aroma of protein denaturation appeared. Jimmy Duplication screamed immediately, feeling the intense burning pain. 2 seconds later, the entire right hand was carbonized and shattered. 5 seconds later, the right forearm was just short of cumin and chili powder. 8 seconds later, the charcoal grilled elbow was ready. 10 seconds later, Russell and Mr. Jimmy reached a friendly consensus. A few minutes later, Russell killed the duplication casually and fell into deep thought. He just got a lot of information from Jimmy. The entire organization led by Cassandra has a total of 46 mutants. Including Juggernaut, Red Devil, Fireman, Sabretooth, Deathwoman, Toad, War Trace, Scorpion Man, Blob, Torrent, etc. In addition, there are a large number of hot weapons, as well as Cassandra's collection of magic tools and potions. So, Russell was a little confused. With this kind of force, how did Wolverine and his 5 people succeed in Deadpool 3? When he watched the movie, he thought it was a bit exaggerated. The electromagnetic car was never used again, otherwise X-23 and Wolverine would not be considered as combat power. Blade and Erica are just flesh and blood, and they will be finished if they are shot. Gambit. This Gambit is much worse than in the comics. As for Deadpool, his combat power is not that strong. Russell couldn't figure out how he won, anyway, he has no idea about this organization at the moment. What's more, Cassandra's mental power is too abnormal. Even Doctor Strange with Infinite Sling Ring became a trophy, he didn't think he could handle it. Sure enough, the time tablet is the way out. With a sigh in his heart, Russell raised his hand and shot the unconscious siren. The next second, the system voice sounded in his mind. The looting entry is completed. X ability Sound Wave, blue-purple, its ability includes sonar, it can evaluate the surrounding environment with different resolutions in a completely dark environment, or detect the distance of an object. Sonic Scream, it can vibrate objects covered by sonic waves and cause imbalance and dizziness. Flight, through sonic waves, you can hover or fly with the help of a special wingsuit, with a maximum speed of subsonic. Do you want to load the entry? Russell didn't dislike it at all and loaded it without hesitation. Although sonar is useless, flight can only fly with the help of a wingsuit. But with the existence of the Venom battle suit, you don't need to wear it at all. When you need to fly, just use the Venom battle suit shape-shifting. Sonic Scream is a good means of surprise attack. For example, if you suddenly use it in close combat, the effect must be very good. And you don't have to bite your tongue all the time. In short, this trip is a good harvest. Snap. Russell casually snapped his fingers to cancel the magic spider web. If he didn't want to get familiar with the power of Spider-Man just now, using magic combined with close combat, he was confident that he could kill the siren within 10 seconds. He then walked to the still numb little wolf girl, squatted down and said with a smile, "Hey, girl. I saved your life, have you thought about how to repay me?" Laura stared at the man in front of her, afraid that this was just her fantasy, and he would be gone in the blink of an eye. Are you stupid? What kind of medicine is so strong? Russell pinched the girl's face and pulled her eyelids to see the pupil reaction. It's normal. Just when he was a little surprised, the little wolf girl suddenly said, "My name is Laura." She spoke very slowly, but very hard and clearly, as if she was afraid that the other party had heard it wrong. Russell was stunned for a moment, then nodded vigorously, and then Zhang Zong said, "My name is Russell." He didn't like people calling him so low in this world, so he directly transliterated Russell. This is his name in the Marvel world from now on. The ordinary Russell has disappeared, and there are Russells who will reach the top. The little wolf girl repeated it several times, then suddenly raised her head and said very seriously, "I'm not a scumbag." This time it was Russell's turn to be a little embarrassed. "I know that, I was just joking just now. By the way, where is your base? I'll take you back." He tried to change the subject. The little wolf girl nodded. As if she had figured something out, she said without any pretense, "I'll be your girlfriend." Ahem. Russell almost choked. This girl is too serious, and he doesn't need to repay a favor. Comics are all lies, don't learn. He muttered, and easily carried the little wolf girl on his back, completely ignoring the weight of the adamantium. Following the instructions, after walking for more than 2 hours, he found the other party's home in a hidden forest near a water source. From the outside, it looks like a house that has been abandoned for a long time, and even the foundation has sunk a lot, and the back half is still embedded in the mountain. But after walking in, you will find that it is very clean inside, and there are several sofas. The colors are different, and you can see that they were dragged back from outside. The reservoir in the middle is very clear. Further back, there is a cave. Russell recognized that this is Laura's base in Deadpool 3. But where are your teammates? He asked. Laura is much better than before, shaking her head and saying, "Without teammates, I have been sneaking around in the void for 3 years. That is, I haven't met Blade Warriors, Gambit and others yet." Russell put the girl on the sofa and asked the doubts in his heart, "By the way, why don't you go to the gathering place of mutants? Besides Cassandra, isn't there a more friendly mutant organization?" Laura shook her head. "I was picked up by that organization when I first arrived in the void. It's very chaotic inside, I can't tell who is a real good person and who is a disguised saint. Once I went to the black market to trade, and after I came out, they tricked me into attracting enemies. After I escaped, I was alone. In the void, good people are indeed a rare species." Russell sighed in his heart, but didn't say anything to comfort him. The other party is very strong and doesn't need those. "How do you feel now?" Russell was still thinking about the things hidden beside his river. If you can avoid flight in the void, don't flight. If you can avoid opening a portal, try not to open a portal. It was really troublesome to attract Elrios. It would take some time to run back, and it would probably be dark again. But he didn't know that just after he finished speaking, he saw the little wolf girl said weakly, "I feel very uncomfortable, and I still can't move." Russell scratched his head. Save people to the end. If he left at this time and someone broke in, it would be a waste of time. "Then I won't leave for now." Russell picked up the girl again. "Where is your room? I'll take you to rest." "Over there." Laura looked at the cave weakly. Russell nodded and walked in with the girl. The environment inside was dark, with almost no light. There was a line on the ground 10 centimeters away to help the bell. It was a warning. However, Russell had night vision ability. After walking about 10 meters, he found a dug room inside. It was only 7 or 8 square meters in size, and a template blocked the wall. With Spider-Man's ability, he could easily perceive that the back was empty. "I think it should be an escape route." Russell was about to put the girl on the simple mattress. Who knew that at the moment of putting her down, the little wolf girl's arms suddenly became strong. She hugged his neck and fell together. Russell pressed on it. Spider telepathy did not trigger. He knew that the other party had no ill intentions. But what was this for? At this time, Laura's voice sounded, not weak at all. "Didn't you say that I was your girlfriend? Do you want to cheat?" Russell was a little embarrassed. "It's just a joke, how can I take it seriously?" "I take it seriously," Laura replied in seconds. Russell could feel the girl's breath spraying on his face, itchy and greasy. He felt a little hot, so he said, "You are too young. I'm 16, an adult. You just want to repay a favor, really, don't care about this. I like you as a person, my heart beats very fast, you can feel it." This. Russell couldn't speak, he could feel it, at the moment he didn't know how to respond. "I just unconsciously remembered that the feeling when I just woke up today was really good." Laura obviously sensed something and said again, "I can feel your heartbeat speeding up, and you are annoying me again, you can't fool me. So, do you want a 16-year-old girl to continue to be unrestrained?" Russell felt his breath approaching. It smelled good. The next second he smiled with relief. The body reflects the most real. What are you awkward about? So this time he took the initiative and lowered his head. That night, the dark environment was no longer silent. 021. Although they were two newcomers, the battle was fierce that night. Wolverine Gene vs Spider Totem and Super Serum and Extremis. Although the former has a high recovery rate, but the latter has a powerful charge ability and endurance. Every attack killed the opponent and made them lose their armor and scream in surrender. Although the enemy was too cunning and continued to fight after recovering their physical strength. But in the end, the superposition of the three abilities was more powerful. Russell became the well-deserved winner. Early morning. The loser was exhausted and still sleeping. Russell was energetic and had already gotten up to get supplies. The location was not too far away. In a total of 3 hours, he moved back the computers, servers, arc reactors, mechanical parts, micro-engines, alcohol, medicines, daily necessities, etc. The little wolf girl had woken up at this time, and when she went out to see the things on the ground, she was shocked. Although I knew that Russell was going to bring some things before going to bed yesterday, this was too much. Whose house did you rob? She had been a wretched person for 3 years, and she had never seen so many good things. Especially the reactor, as a stable energy source, it is a hot commodity in the void like a wasteland world. While assembling the computer and stabilizing the voltage supplied by the reactor through the transformer, Russell replied, "The captain of Hydra wanted to trick me, but I solved him and his teammates Spider-Man and Iron Man. The family assets they have saved are naturally mine." Hearing these careless words, the little wolf girl's expression was shocked again and again. She definitely knew who Russell was talking about. Those variants are notorious and have killed many people. But technology, magician, and super ability are very powerful together, and no one will avenge dead man. Now I didn't expect that he would die silently in Russell's hands. After the shock, the little wolf girl felt particularly good for no reason. She lay on the table, tilted her head and looked at her boyfriend, and said proudly, "Russell, you are so awesome." Russell raised his eyebrows. Needless to say, didn't you know last night? Laura is not that kind of little woman, and she immediately got up. That's just a temporary truce. Let's compete again tonight if you dare. After more than 10 hours of recuperation, she is confident that she is invincible tonight. Can young people endure this? Russell put down the work in his hands and dragged the unconvinced little wolf girl to fight. He said it here. One of them must lie down today, and begging for mercy won't work this time. 2 hours later. Russell came out sweating all over. It was another hearty battle. I don't know if the exchange last night was effective, the little wolf girl's fighting power is indeed a little stronger today. But she is still defeated and was killed without armor. There is no way. The continuous operation of the heart of the crucible, he is the father for continuous fighting. After getting a bucket of water and washing himself casually, Russell continued to work. First, he stabilized the power supply, fixed the computer and server, and then used the knowledge he got from Baron Mordo to make magic vines to cover the whole house. From the outside, this part of the mountain was covered with vines, and there was no sign of a house inside. Now this is considered a safe base. He also planned to build a meditation room so that he could practice magic himself. After all, there was a knowledge curse entry, and he was very good at this. Before he knew it, it was dark. Russell didn't disturb the little wolf girl's rest. He ate some canned food and started trying to crack the time tablet. Tony Stark's computer is very high level. It has added the computing hardware of the armor, so the computing power is very high. After connecting the time tablet, Russell began to look for the locking program. TVA is completely technological, and you can definitely find it as long as you are careful. If you can't find it, it's Tony Stark's technological garbage. He must be fine. While searching on the computer, Russell sat aside with nothing to do, recalling magic knowledge in his mind. Mordo still has 3 spells that he hasn't learned, but he remembers the specific practice methods. They are, Astral Projection, Ice Vine of Ixaron, Shape of Archon. The first one is Soul Astral. Mordo originally knew it, but after using Soul Extraction, this spell was sometimes effective and sometimes not. Until the end, it was completely useless. Russell knew that his soul was marked. I'm afraid that Mephisto secretly tampered with the soul extraction to prevent others from discovering his abnormal soul, so he couldn't use astral projection. The second spell is Extremis Ice Creeper. This is a spell created by the great magician Extremis, not the kind of secret method that requires the consent of the dimension Mephisto. It can release ice creepers to attack and bind. It's a good spell. As for the form of Archon, Russell knows this awesome spell without Mordo's knowledge. On Titan, Doctor Strange used this trick to divide thousands of duplications to fight Thanos, which is a big move. Russell is confident that he can learn it as long as he has time. At this time, a ding prompt sound came from the computer. The screen has shown that the lock program has been found. Russell's face was happy. But the next second, he saw the computer prompt that the computing power was insufficient and could not be cracked. Insufficient computing power. He got up and went to the pile of armor parts to fiddle with it. There is an entry for Warframe Master, and Russell soon found a special GPU in it, which is computing power hardware. Then it was a tossing and turning. If Tony can install it in the computer, he can do it too. He increased the output voltage of the reactor, restarted the computer again, and started calculating. Soon a prompt appeared on the screen. Cracking degree 0%, time required seconds. Do you want to start? Good news, it can be cracked. Bad news, it will take 3 years. And the computer has to run continuously for 3 years. Russell felt that it would be difficult to last for 3 years with the quality of this computer and the surrounding environment. No. This must be too slow. Since the computing power is insufficient, I will continue to increase it myself. Before crossing over, those supercomputers were just stacking games, so this method should be useful. Although there is no computing power hardware in the remaining armor parts, there may be some in the black market. Russell decided to try his luck. Now there is a teleportation spell and the flight ability in the Siren entry, so even if there is a crisis, it should not be a problem to escape. 022. Russell planned to go to the black market the next day. But he kept procrastinating until the 5th day. As for why he didn't go, there was no way, his self-control was not strong, and he would procrastinate all the time. But the good news was that he didn't have to run this time. Driving a Honda Odyssey, which was not known how many times he had used it, he took 3 hours to get to the mine. Last time he could only watch from a distance. This time he drove straight in. Although any fighting was prohibited in the black market, Russell still didn't bring Laura with him. The little wolf girl was a little angry because she didn't win once recently. Now she is training at home, hoping to defeat him. After getting out of the car, Russell looked around. There were 2 18th century Western-style bar wooden houses outside the mine, but they were dilapidated and no one was inside. The black market was in the mine cave. It was not dark inside. There was an old-fashioned incandescent lamp every 10 meters, and the light was dim. Until walking diagonally down for more than 100 meters, a golden door appeared in front of him, with cuneiform characters engraved on it. A strong Egyptian style, somewhat out of tune with the entire mine. But this is not the most important thing. The next second, Russell almost took action directly. Soldiers wearing TVA combat uniforms stood on both sides of the door. But after a closer look, the 2 men were unkempt and their clothes were rather worn out. It was immediately clear that they were just 2-time offenders in disguise. I wonder if the owner of the black market deliberately intimidated the newcomers. I haven't seen you before, newcomer. Do you know the rules? The 2 gatekeepers spoke one after another. Russell nodded, no fighting, and you have to pay at least 0.1 ounces of gold, right? The little wolf girl told him this rule. He could understand the former. But this gold was really incomprehensible. This is a wasteland like void, what's the use of this thing? Fortunately, the little wolf girl has collected it, otherwise he would have to find it now. Russell took out a fingernail-sized gold and handed it to one of the gatekeepers. In an instant, the piercing system alarm sounded again. Warning! 0.1 micrograms of spiritual essence will be lost soon. Ding! Soul immunity. Warning cancelled. What's wrong, don't you want to go in? The gold will not be returned if you don't go in. Seeing Russell not moving, one of them frowned. Russell smiled, definitely go in, but I suddenly remembered that I forgot to refuel the car, and it seems a bit difficult to go back. Another gatekeeper said proudly, you are ignorant. As long as you have something valuable to exchange, let alone gasoline, Iron Man's armor will do. Russell nodded and said thank you. At this time, the golden door became illusory, and he walked in directly. At the moment, the smile on his face had disappeared. At this moment, he finally understood why this black market wanted to collect gold. That FG thing is not gold. It is clearly a trade of souls. The soul is made up of spiritual essence, although it is only 0.1 micrograms, it looks very inconspicuous. But it can't resist the accumulation of small amounts. How many years has this black market existed, and how many times has it been traded? It is probably an astronomical number. He is sure that the controller behind this black market is definitely related to the Egyptian pantheon. But Russell doesn't understand why he can be immune to the soul. Is it because the Traverser does not belong to the soul of this world? If so, wouldn't it be a huge profit to trade with Mephisto? Russell thought about it and drove this idea out of his mind. Dimension Mephisto is much more powerful than the Egyptian god. And the most important thing now is, will he be discovered if he doesn't trade spiritual essence? Russell stood behind the door and waited for a while. If there is any abnormality, he will directly start the teleportation. And he believes that this transaction is not done by the person behind the scenes, it should be just a procedure. It is highly likely that it will not be discovered. The golden door became illusory, which should mean that the transaction was passed. A few minutes later, the golden door suddenly became illusory again. Russell took a look and saw another familiar guy. The other party had the same face as Captain America. Russell couldn't help but glance at the butt. Well, it's not perky enough. Obviously it's not Captain America or the Snake Team. Then, get out of the way, you gay. FK, how can someone still stare at my butt when I'm in the void? FK, being handsome is also dangerous. The man looked at Russell with a warning look, and then walked away cursing. Russell's mouth twitched, and he was speechless. It was confirmed that it was really the guy named Thunderbolt this time. I have to say, he really looks like he deserves a beating. He shook his head and followed him in. After passing through a corridor, the space suddenly became clear. This is a hall with an area of more than 10,000 square meters. There is a miniature sun on the dome dozens of meters above, making it look like daytime here. Russell only took a glance and instinctively knew that it was just a fake sun created by magic. He understood that it should be the ability of knowledge curse that triggered the magic side. Russell decided that if he had the opportunity in the future, he must go to Camartage to learn, and he would definitely gain a lot. Only then did he start to look at the entire black market. The hall was circular. The inner ring was for things that outsiders deposited in the black market for sale. The outer ring was where the time prisoners sat on the ground and set up stalls, with all kinds of things. These were also told to him by the little wolf girl. Russell glanced at the outer ring and found that it was all a pile of junk. Then he walked straight into the inner ring. To his surprise, there were really steel armor parts here. Russell knew where the computing components were, and he saw a total of 4. Then he saw the trading requirements above. The trading conditions for these parts were, 1 ton of food, or 3 cubic meters of wine, or 50 bottles of painkillers, 500 tablets, or a large number of weapons, or high-level technology products, or magic tools. These are all good things in the void, and the people who sell them are obviously very smart. However, although these trading conditions seem difficult, Russell is not worried. Because he can make the last magic tool. The red crystal defense necklace that Mordo had at that time was a magic tool. The production method is in the entry obtained from the other party, as long as you find the gem, you can make it. And gems are much easier to find. Seeing that he can't afford it at the moment, Russell began to stroll around casually. Finally, he used some compressed food and canned food he brought with him to exchange some gasoline and new clothes for the little wolf girl. Carrying the oil bottle, Russell returned along the original route. Thunderbolt walked out of the cave with a box of canned food. However, as soon as he arrived at the mine, he stopped and looked outside with a gloomy face. I saw a convertible painted with Hellfire and 2 modified trucks parked outside the mine less than 50 meters away. 6 or 7 people were sitting in the car, and some were standing. But all their eyes were looking here. Thunderbolt's face suddenly darkened, and then he shouted loudly, "You rubbish worse than feces, do you know the rules? This is the black market, you are blocking me here. FK, even the devils in hell are better than you." He had heard that the crazy woman wanted to catch him, but he didn't expect that she dared to do it. No one has ever dared to make trouble in the black market. However, as soon as the voice fell, the fireman shouted from the opposite side, "Stupid Thunderbolt, what has this got to do with you? Are you worthy? You have been mixed up in the void, and you still think you are a star, get the hell out of here." Hearing this, Thunderbolt was stunned. If it's not him, who else is worthy of being blocked by these mutants? This is impossible. These dirty bugs must be deceiving him. At this moment, he suddenly heard a faint voice from behind. Please make way. I have to send these rubbish on their way quickly, my girlfriend is waiting for me to finish dinner at home. 023. The moment Thunderbolt heard the voice behind him, he saw the fireman and Sabretooth in the distance all looking behind him. It was obvious that the target this time was the other party. He turned around and found that the person who walked out of the cave was the guy who looked at his butt before. Thunderbolt blurted out, "You also have a girlfriend in the void. You are not gay." "No. Are they waiting for you?" Russell glanced at him lightly as they passed by, "None of your business." Thunderbolt did not swear this time, but was happy and said, "So that crazy woman is interested in you, a pretty boy. Ha ha ha, I'm safe." As he said that, he winked and said, "I heard that the crazy woman is very perverted and likes to insert her hands into people. I don't know if your little body is the board can withstand it. But if you are afraid, you can hire me to fight for you. A box of the most ordinary wine will do." "You are actually upset that the person waiting on the other side is not you." Russell did not say this. After taking a serious look at this guy, he kindly said, "Go home quickly, Flame Baby. There is someone on the other side who is a natural counter to you, don't you know?" Flame Baby, Human Torch stared, his blood pressure rose. Those days, Dr. Doom couldn't beat me, Silver Glider was even more defeated, and Planet Devourer called me Daddy. Counter me. Now I will let you know why my nickname is Hellfire. Aren't you the Human Torch? When did you get this nickname? And stop bragging, okay? One of the above can beat you to death." Russell was speechless. But before he opened his mouth, he saw the Human Torch throw the can in his hand to the ground with a snap and shouted, "Thunderbolt fire!" After saying the line, he was burning with flames all over his body, and flew towards Sabretooth and others in the distance with a whoosh. "Very imposing. But I still like the way you shout the Avengers to assemble more." Russell muttered, put down the things in his hand, and followed him out. He was afraid that if he walked slowly, this guy would be beaten to death. Sure enough, as soon as he walked out of the mine, he saw the Human Torch with a missing brain stem hovering in the air and spraying flames, and then was sucked up by the fireman. With a bang, he fell directly to the ground, and it hurt just to look at it. But this guy didn't die from the fall, his expression was distorted, and he turned his head and said painfully, "Brother, save me. Your father can't save you either." The toad laughed sinisterly, opened his mouth suddenly, and his tumor-covered tongue shot out, trying to catch the Human Torch back. But a purple cobweb was faster than him. The toad retracted his tongue and ate a mouthful of dirt. He looked at the target with a very ugly face and pulled the Thunderbolt to his side. "Thanks, buddy. I'll buy you a drink when I'm free." The Thunderbolt climbed up with a grin, and then excused himself, "I was careless just now. If I didn't use the flame jet, I would have smashed him to pieces with a rocket headbutt. So it's not that he restrained me, but that I chose the wrong battle plan. Next time I will definitely win." Russell rolled his eyes. He is really stubborn. At this time, the sound of "pa pa pa" sounded. The fireman smiled and applauded, "Jimmy is right, you are Spider-Man. Tisk tisk, this is a rare species in the void." Russell was not surprised that he was targeted on this black market trip. The replica that died was just a duplication, and the original body would naturally cause trouble for him after getting the memory. Just now in the trading hall, he perceived that someone was observing him with malicious intent. He knew that it was the mutants who came to block him. But he didn't expect that this group of people would block the entrance of the mine so carelessly, and it seemed that they didn't give the black market any face at all. Russell felt that either this group of mutants didn't know the existence behind the black market, or he might have to evaluate that existence again, and it might be different from what he thought. But no matter what, this battle is inevitable. "Who will go up?" the fireman said calmly, and it seemed that he didn't take Spider-Man seriously. "Roar!" Sabretooth jumped off the car with a bang, looking at the target with a grim smile, "Let me do it. Tiger kills Spider, easy." Human Torch swallowed his saliva, looked at Russell and whispered, "Dude, you are Spider-Man. These guys are not martial ethics, this terrain is blocking you, why don't we run back to the black market?" Russell patted the shoulder of the Human Torch, and said confidently, "Don't worry, I am Spider-Man mutated by Captain America. Watch how I chop off his head." How can you brag more than me? Human Torch looked skeptical. But this guy is really nice, even though his body is now drained by the fireman, he stood there and didn't run back. Roar! Sabretooth roared wildly, and the nails of his 10 fingers grew rapidly, forming sharp claws. Then he charged directly. In contrast, Russell walked towards the other party slowly, and it seemed that he had weaknesses all over his body. The next second, the two were about to collide. Just when Thunderbolt thought that his friend was about to be stabbed to death. Suddenly, he saw this Spider-Man nimbly sideways to avoid the attack. At the same time, he grasped Sabretooth's sharp right palm with both hands at a very fast speed, crushed it with force, and pierced into the opponent's neck. Plop! Sabretooth ran 2 more steps and knelt directly on the ground. The head was pulled together, leaving only a trace of skin, and blood gushed out of the neck. Killed instantly. The scene was silent. It seemed that no one expected this result. At this time, a laugh suddenly broke the silence. Who's next? 024. Fireman narrowed his eyes slightly. Sabretooth is not a weakling, whether it is self-healing ability, strength, or combat skills, they are all very strong. But now he was killed instantly in a situation that was obviously not restrained by ability. It's not that Spider-Man has not been hunted before, but this seems a little different. The Human Torch was even more stunned. He thought that this pretty boy brother could win, but he didn't think he could win so easily. Speed. Strength. Skills. They are all completely crushing Sabretooth. The most important thing is, who will come next? This is so damn cool, why am I not the one pretending to be cool? The Human Torch silently remembered this sentence and planned to use it when he had the chance. But the next second, he silently took a step back. He saw that the fireman, Toad, Deathwoman, Callisto, female, monitoring mutant level and high speed, and Quill people on the opposite side all moved. It's stupid to fight alone. They are villains, but they are not brainless. Sabretooth was killed instantly, and the surprise was too big. The first to attack was Fireman. He raised his hand, and the mechanical ignition device on his wrist provided a weak flame that expanded in an instant. It turned into a hot column of fire and exploded, drowning Russell in the blink of an eye. The scorching heat wave made the surrounding air curl. The mouth of the Thunderbolt was dry. It was not because he felt hot, but he didn't expect that Russell, who was just pretending to be cool, would be BBQED like this. It turned out that this was not Spider-Man's terrain. If you meet someone who doesn't follow martial ethics, you will still die. Just when he thought he should run, a lazy voice suddenly came from the flame. Can it be higher? I can still hold on. The temperature of the yellow flame is only 900 at most, which is too easy for Russell who can withstand 2600 high temperatures. The Thunderbolt, who was about to run, stopped and said with his chest up, "Brother, you are awesome. I knew you wouldn't lose. FK those bastards. Damn, you were about to run just now." Toad looked at him with contempt, and was also shocked that Spider-Man was not afraid of fire. No wonder he didn't dodge just now. The fireman, who was controlling the fire, had a gloomy face. The tone of the prey gave him a feeling like taking a hot spring bath, but complaining that the temperature was not enough. It was simply humiliating himself. Looking for death. The fireman changed from controlling the fire with one hand to controlling the fire with both hands. The flames that were ejected in an instant rolled like a tornado. The Thunderbolt was a master of playing with fire, and it was obvious at a glance that he wanted to compress the fire to form a high pressure and high temperature state. But looking at the color of the flame, it seemed that there was no change. Hello level mutant. It's a good idea, but it's a pity that it can't be done. The Thunderbolt mocked with a yin and yang look. Being mocked by his defeated opponent, the fireman felt as uncomfortable as if he had eaten shit. In fact, the temperature of the flames has definitely risen by several hundred degrees, but it has not reached a qualitative change. Quill! He shouted. The latter immediately arched his body, and the next second, dense spikes shot into the flames. Ability mutation, he couldn't do this before. That's why he was cut by the Time Change Bureau. But before the shooting spikes sank into the flames, a shadow jumped out of it. Humph, I've been waiting for you. The Toad, who had been accumulating power and waiting, sneered, ejected his tongue, and instantly wrapped around the prey. At the same time, Callisto's figure disappeared. In less than 0.5 seconds, he crossed a distance of more than 20 meters and came behind the opponent. As soon as she raised the dagger, she heard the toad screaming, and at the same time, there was a hissing sound in her ears. But she didn't stop attacking. Let alone screaming, teammates don't care even if they die. However, when the dagger fell, there was no feeling of piercing flesh and blood. On the contrary, because he used too much force, his body lost balance after he missed the target. Then he heard a sneer in his ear, "It's so easy to predict a waste like you." Before Callisto could react, his neck cracked, and he fell to the ground without even a scream. Behind. Thunderbolt was shocked at the moment. He saw the whole process, and finally understood why the fireman's flame had no effect on the opponent. How could a 900-degree flame burn a person who could release thousands of degrees of high temperature? The toad's tongue was scorched in an instant, and then stretched and torn apart by the huge force. It was obvious that being hit and entangled was intentional. What shocked him even more was that this Spider-Man seemed to be able to foresee what would happen in advance. Then he easily dodged the fatal attack of the woman who could move at high speed, and directly broke the opponent's cervical vertebrae. Another one was killed in seconds. Even the opponent seemed to be going to die. But the battle did not stop because of this. The next second he saw the Quill Man charging confidently. The Human Torch suddenly became nervous. This guy dared to attack after seeing the ability of this mutant Spider-Man. He must be a powerful existence. Maybe I should stay away from the battlefield. Bang! The Human Torch just took a step back and saw that the very confident Quill Man was kicked by Russell and flew more than 10 meters away. He spun in the air and vomited blood, leaving a line of blood, and fell to the ground with a smack. He was dead as hell. Well, this time he really died. The Human Torch stopped silently and slightly straightened his chest. It was so embarrassing that he was scared by such a super idiot. I hope my good friend didn't see it. At this time, Russell turned his head and asked curiously, "Why did you step back? Is the ground you were standing on hot?" 025. Thunderbolt remained calm and said without hesitation, "Brother, you are such a joker. My legs are just a little numb from standing all the time. You know, I usually fly. Have you heard of the bird without legs? I am almost the same. It is impossible to admit it, not in this life. Only by being tough can one barely maintain some face." As he said this, he suddenly discovered something, pointed behind Russell, and said anxiously, "Hey, the fireman is going to drive away. I definitely know, this is not caring about you." While Russell was speaking, he stretched his arm back, without turning his head, and grabbed from top to bottom. Thunderbolt suddenly felt that the sunlight seemed to become a little more dazzling. No. It's not the sunlight that is dazzling, it's something else. Thunderbolt opened his mouth involuntarily, and a golden meteor was reflected in his eyes. Boom! The blazing flaming holy sword fell from the sky, accurately hitting the already started convertible, and a violent explosion occurred immediately. The strong impact turned into a gust of air, directly knocking over the death girl who was running towards Russell. The face of the Thunderbolt changed, and he wanted to lie down, but it was too late. He cursed a word of FK, and was also knocked over, eating a mouthful of sand, and his head was buzzing. Puh, puh, puh. Isn't your explosion too outrageous? The Thunderbolt shook his head, looking shocked. How could a normal car explosion be so terrifying? It must be because of the flaming sword. At this time, the dust had fallen. He looked up and saw that the original position of the convertible had become a big pit, with scrap metal parts scattered everywhere. As for the fireman, he tried to look for it, and found that this mutant Spider-Man was really good. Not only was it cremated very cleanly, but the ashes were also scattered. Suddenly, the Thunderbolt remembered that when he first entered the black market, he seemed to have called the other party a gay because he looked at his butt. By the way, is it too late to apologize now? You don't need to take off your pants yourself. At this moment, he felt a chill on his butt. Russell didn't know that the Human Torch was thinking about it, and turned to look at the death woman who got up from the ground. "Why didn't you run just now?" The death woman's face did not have any fear, or any expression, but she said indifferently, "Lady Cassandra's order is to capture you back. The fireman is good at flattery. If I just run back like this, my end will not be much better than being alive. That's why he turned around and ran, because I definitely won't run." Russell didn't sympathize, and smiled grimly, "I remember that your self-healing ability is much better than Sabretooth, almost comparable to Wolverine. I wonder if you can survive after your head is cut off." The death woman opened her 10 fingers slightly, and the sharp adamantium spikes popped out of her fingertips. She licked her lips. "Come over and I'll tell you." A few minutes later, Russell pulled out the death woman's head along with the spine, and the latter's eyes suddenly fell into grey. "Haha, it seems that you are much worse than Wolverine." This scene looked extremely horrifying in the eyes of Thunderbolt. Russell, covered in blood, holding a head and spine, was even more terrifying than the devil in the Bible. At this moment, he suddenly felt that sometimes some things could be endured. In order to survive, it is not impossible to sacrifice. At this time, he happened to see the other party looking at him, and he was immediately startled, and tried to force a smile on his face. Russell frowned and looked back, always thinking that the other party was thinking something bad. However, spider telepathy did not trigger, probably because he was just talking nonsense in his heart. He was too lazy to pay attention to this guy, and the fine wounds on his body and the battlesuit slowly healed, and the system sound came to his ears. Entry Plunder completed. X ability Death Girl, purple, possessing the self-healing factor, it can be immune to fatal injuries except decapitation, and can quickly regenerate any body organs and parts. It has a certain bonus to body modification. Although this ability is not as powerful as Wolverine, Russell is still very satisfied. The rapid regeneration of self-healing ability is much faster than Extremis, but the weakness of decapitation is eliminated by Extremis. Presumably it is not much weaker than Wolverine. As for the latter's super long life, Russell has already obtained it from others. Russell moved his mind, and all the entries he plundered before appeared. X ability Sabretooth, blue-purple, good self-healing ability, with 300 years of life. X ability Quill, green, the body can burst out quill spikes and shoot. X ability Toad, green, jumping ability is strengthened. The tongue has extremely high ductility, which can be extended to up to 10 meters, and can secrete a paralyzing toxin. Note, after this entry is loaded, the skin will show a certain Toad mutation. X ability Fireman, blue, control fire and absorb fire. Russell was not too happy. The Fireman's ability is average. It's better than nothing, with a little more means of controlling flames. But at this moment, the system's voice sounded again. Integrable entry detected, Extremis. Integrate completed. Extremis flame blood control, purple, Extremis temperature increased, up to 3800. Can create flames and fiery blood. Can control flames and fiery blood. Can absorb flames. Warning, excessive consumption of fiery blood will cause weakness. Russell completely ignored the warning, and at this moment, he couldn't help but feel surprised. The entry can actually be integrated. And it has become obviously more powerful. Both the temperature and the means of attack are much stronger than before. Even the fireman was wiped out. Comparable to 1 + 1 = 10. As for the weakness caused by excessive consumption of fiery blood, that's not a problem. Sabretooth's self-healing factor, plus the Death Girl's self-healing factor, perfectly make up for this weakness. Russell retracts his previous comments on Fireman. The brother's ability is not ordinary at all. Outer good. As for Quill and Toad's abilities, what the hell, get out of here. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you're notified of future uploads. You can find the next parts in the playlist visible on the screen or on my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.